Chapter 88. Hearing me say that, Suri relaxed. He squatted in front of me and smiled. That's good. As long as I didn't make you unhappy, that's good. Can you think about what I just told you? Let me protect you, okay? Just think of it as paying off a debt. Paying off a debt? What debt? I looked at Suri suspiciously. Suri smiled. You saved my sister and took care of me. No matter what, from now on I'm yours. I'm under your control. Hearing Suri say that, I couldn't help but laugh. I looked at him and said, You make it sound so ambiguous. It feels so mushy. Suri looked at me and reached out to gently rub my hair. He said seriously, Don't cry so sadly in the future. I will do my best to make you happy. You won't have to suffer any more grievances. Thank you. Hearing Suri say so much to me, my heart was moved. Even when my heart was hurt, there was still someone who cared about me. I felt that my cold heart wasn't so cold anymore. Sister-in-law. I heard Xinyao's voice before I even saw her shadow. Then I saw Xinyao's figure. She saw us and walked towards us. When Suri saw Xinyao, he stood up. Sister-in-law, what are you doing? Xinyao looked at Suri and then sat next to me. She held my arm and sighed helplessly. Suri looked at Xinyao and then said to me, You guys chat. I'm going to see my sister. I nodded to him and he left. Xinyao looked at his back as he left, then turned her head to look at me and said, Sister-in-law, who is he? My new male bodyguard. His name is Suri. Sister-in-law, did you fall in love with someone else? Do you not love my brother anymore? Xinyao pouted and looked at me with an aggrieved face. I gently patted her head and said, Silly girl, what are you talking about? I met him in the police station. He used to be taken care of by the Red Ming Hui. His sister was sick and needed surgery. I saw that he was a good person. After leaving the police station, I paid for his sister's medical expenses and arranged for her surgery. At the same time, I bailed him out and arranged for him to work for Uncle Bai. Today, when he saw Duan Mukei's attitude towards me, he suddenly felt very angry. Then he told me that he wanted to work for me and protect me. Did you? Xinyao, and she looked at me with a pout of her mouth. I smiled and looked at her. You can say that. He's not bad. He's reliable. He'll be useful in many ways in the future. Xinyao sighed, looked at me and said, Then do you still love my brother? I do. My feelings for him have never changed, but I feel like he doesn't love me anymore. Maybe it's because he lost his memory, he has forgotten about me. Right now, I feel that his feelings for me are not as deep as his feelings for Xian. Or maybe he doesn't have any feelings at all. I don't know how to put it, but my heart is very upset. Talking about this topic made her very depressed. Xinyao hugged me. She leaned on my shoulder and said to me, Sister-in-law, actually seeing my brother like this, I feel very uncomfortable in my heart. I always feel like he erased you from his memory. I don't know if he really can't remember you, or if he deliberately can't remember you. It's okay. He'll slowly remember. Everything will be fine. Don't be angry. Being angry is not good for your skin. I patted Xinyao's back. I felt sorry for her. She's right. I don't want my little sister to grow old faster than me. Behind us came Duan Mukei's voice. Xinyao and I turned around. It was Duan Mukei and Yu Xian. Yu Xian held Duan Mukei's arm and walked towards us. They looked like a couple in love. It was a very unpleasant scene. Seeing this scene, Xinyao couldn't control her temper. She stood up and looked at Yu Xian. What right do you have to hold my brother's arm? Let go. Xinyao pointed at Yu Xian's arm that was holding Duan Mukei's arm and roared at her. Yu Xian glanced at me, then looked at Xinyao. She helplessly pulled her arm back. Duan Mukei looked at Xinyao and said, Mimi, is there still some misunderstanding between you and Xin? It'll be fine if you talk it out. Dad and Mom said to get along peacefully. Get along peacefully with her? Don't even dream about it. Brother, it doesn't matter if you really lost your memory or not. I can't be friends with her. I've said it before, I can't coexist with her. Xinyao glared fiercely at Yu Xian, as if she wanted to eat her alive. Duan Mukei didn't respond to Xinyao. He looked at me, sizing me up from head to toe. Then he walked in front of me and said, Come with me. I have something to talk to you about. I glanced at Xinyao. Xinyao gave me a meaningful look. She wanted me to talk to him. I turned to Duan Muke and said, "Okay." Duan Muke walked deeper into the green zone. I followed behind him and kept walking forward. At this time, Yu Xian wanted to follow, but she was stopped by Xinyao. Yu Xian looked at Xinyao and asked, "What's the meaning of this?" Xinyao stood in front of Yu Xian. She looked at her and said, "Didn't you hear what my brother said? He wants to talk to my sister-in-law, not you. Why are you following him?" Yu Xian looked at Xinyao, her eyes burning with anger. I turned my head and followed Duan Muke's footsteps, walking deeper into the green belt. In the middle of the hospital's back garden, there was a small man-made lake. Walking to the lakeside, Duan Muke stopped. I stood behind him, suddenly feeling that this figure was both familiar and unfamiliar. Duan Muke suddenly turned around, looked at me and said, "I've already heard about the matter between you and me from my parents and Xinyao. I'm sorry. I didn't know that I lost my memory. It was after they finished telling me that I lost my memory." Hearing him say that, my mood improved a lot. I smiled at him and said, "It's okay. As long as you can recover, your health is more important than anything else. I'm sorry for what I did to you earlier. Before I understood the situation, my attitude toward you was extremely bad. I'm sorry for making you suffer." Duan Muke stood in front of me and apologized. I had a feeling that something bad was about to happen. "It's okay. There's no need to apologize between the two of us." I looked at Duan Muke's face. The feeling in my heart was indescribable. "I won't beat around the bush with you. I called you here because I want to talk to you about us." Duan Muke stood in front of me, his expression calm. "What do you want to talk to me about?" I looked at Duan Muke and asked, "Let's get a divorce." Chapter 89. I looked at Duan Muke and asked him in disbelief, "What did you just say?" Duan Muke looked at me and adjusted his collar. He looked at me and said, "I said let's get a divorce. Since it's a marriage arranged by our parents, and you didn't want it to happen, we should hurry up and end this situation. I won't affect your life, and I hope you won't affect mine." I calmed down and looked at Duan Muquebec. "Is this your own idea? Who else would it be?" He looked at me, his eyes strange. Tears rolled down from the corners of my eyes. Duan Muke looked at me and was stunned for a moment. Then he said, "Oh, I understand. How about this? Give me your bank account number. After we get a divorce, I'll give you a handsome sum of money as compensation." "Who wants your stinky money?" I turned my face away from him. Duan Muke sneered. He looked at me and said, "Don't all women love a man's money?" "Oh, I understand what you mean. We've already had sex. Don't worry. I'll give you a handsome sum of money as a breakup fee, including compensation for the psychological damage and the loss of your youth. What do you think?" I turned to look at him and said, "I told you I don't want your money." Duan Muke walked over to me. He reached out and pressed me against the tree. Looking at me, he said, "Lung Yuli, you'd better do what you say. Don't cross my bottom line. Otherwise, I don't know what I'll do to you." My shoulder hurt from being pressed against the tree. I sneered at Duan Muke and said, "I've experienced the old you. If I was an angel in the past, then I'm definitely a demon now." Duan Muke let go of my hand and looked at me. I didn't want to look at him. Duan Muke continued, "Since you've been living in my house, I'm not in a hurry to let you move out. I don't want people to say that I, Duan Muke, am too decisive. I'll give you half a month. After half a month, I don't want to see anything of yours in my house." "No need. I won't go back. You can get rid of everything related to me." Duan Muke's words made me very angry. Duan Muke suddenly reached out and grabbed my chin. He raised my head and stared coldly into my eyes. I didn't avoid his gaze and looked him in the eye. Duan Muke looked at me and said, "This matter is not up to you. I say when you can leave, then you can leave. You want to leave now? Impossible. I don't care how powerful the Red Minghui is. I only care about who dares to disobey the Duanmu family. I advise you to recognize the situation, and don't do anything useless. You want to escape? Impossible." I shook off Duan Muke's hand and looked at him. "Don't touch me. Why do you make all the decisions? Don't think too highly of yourself. If you marry a chicken, you have to follow the chicken. If you marry a dog, You have to follow the dog. Since you married me, married into the Duanmu family, you have to listen to the Duanmu family. After Duanmu K said that, he pulled my hand and walked towards the hospital building. Although I struggled, Duanmu K was too strong. I felt a faint pain in my wrist. However, Duanmu K didn't seem to want to let go. When we reached the bench where I had rested earlier, I saw Yu Xian and Xinyao still standing there. The two of them didn't say anything. They just looked at each other with murderous expressions. When Yu Xian saw Duanmu K pull me over, she smiled and walked over. She looked at Duanmu K and said, "Brother Duanmu, you talked for so long. You should go back and rest. The doctor said you should rest on time." Duanmu K looked at Yu Xian and smiled. He said softly, "Okay, I know. Let's go back to the ward." Duanmu K used all his strength to throw me in front of Xinyao. I lost my balance and almost fell. Xinyao quickly supported me. She looked at Duanmu K and said angrily, "Brother, what are you doing? Look, you've made sister-in-law's wrist red." Xinyao gently held my wrist. There was a clear handprint of 5 fingers on it. Duanmu K looked at Xinyao. He pointed at me and said coldly, "Xinyao, go back and tell mom and dad that I've already talked with her. In 15 days we will divorce. For the sake of our Kurosawa's face, I won't drive her away for the next 15 days. You take good care of her. It's best if she stays at home for the next 15 days. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." Duanmu K looked at me, then turned around and pulled Yu Xian toward the hospital building. "Brother, how can you be like this?" Xinyao looked at the backs of Duanmu K and Yu Xian. She was very angry. She roared at Duanmu K, but Duanmu K didn't even turn his head. He left with Yu Xian while talking and laughing. I tightly gripped Xinyao's hand and said, "Forget it, Xinyao, let him be." "But he wants to divorce you. Sister-in-law. He's so close to Yu Xian. Is he going to be with that slut?" "Sister-in-law, you can't agree to divorce him." Xinyao supported me and looked at me as she spoke. I shook my head with a cold smile and said, "What else can I do? I don't know what to do to make him remember our past." "Sister-in-law, don't get agitated. Your wrist is injured. I'll take you to the hospital to get it bandaged first." Xinyao lifted my wrist that was red from Duanmu K's grasp and said worriedly, "No need. Compared to this, my heart hurts even more. But there's no medicine to treat it." My tears flowed down again. Seeing me cry, Xinyao hugged me tightly. She patted my back and said, "Sister-in-law, don't cry. Let's go home first. I'll talk to mom and dad about this. I want to see how my brother can win against the 3 of us." I leaned into Xinyao's embrace and suddenly thought of a person. I dialed his number. "Hello, where are you? If there's nothing, can you come find me? That's mine." After saying that, I hung up the phone. Leaning into Xinyao's embrace, my tears flowed down uncontrollably. Xinyao whispered into my ear, "Sister-in-law, who did you just call? You'll know in a bit." I didn't say much and waited for that person to come. After 5 minutes, I heard the sound of hurried footsteps from not too far away. I let go of Xinyao and turned around. As expected, it was Suri. He ran all the way in front of us. Standing there, he looked at me and panted, "Missy, what's wrong? Did something happen?" I looked at Suri and said, "Didn't you want to stay by my side and be my bodyguard? Does that still count?" "Of course it counts. Missy, you agreed?" Suri looked at me excitedly. Chapter 90. I looked at Suri and nodded. Suri excitedly jumped up, looked at me and said, "That's great. I can finally work for you. That's great." Looking at Suri's excited expression, Xinyao pursed her lips and looked at Suri and said, "Is there a need to be so happy? So annoying. There's someone who's going to steal my sister-in-law." Suri looked at Xinyao and said, "Miss Duanmu K, hello, I am Suri, currently Miss Lung's bodyguard." As he said that, he extended his hand in front of Xinyao and looked at Xinyao with a smile. Xinyao glanced at me. I motioned for her to shake hands with Suri. Only then did she extend her hand, shook Suri's hand for a moment, then let go. Xinyao looked at me and said, "Sister-in-law, what do you mean by taking him in as a bodyguard?" I looked at Xinyao and said, "I'll have to ask you to put in a good word for me in front of mom and dad." "That's not a problem. The key is what you want me to do. Xingyao never hesitated when it came to my requests. She always tried her best to help me. I looked at her and said, if Duanmuke really wants to divorce me, I can't leave your home at will. I can only quietly stay in your home. Also, I can't predict what you Xian will do to me during this period of time. Now that I don't have Duanmuke as a guarantee, if you Xian really wants to do something to me, I won't even be able to resist. That's why I'm taking Suri with me. First, he can protect me, and second, he can do a lot of things for me. So, I'll have to trouble you to talk to mom and dad, and let Suri enter the Duanmuke's home for 15 days. If we really divorce, I'll take him with me. Xingyao pulled my hand and said, that's not a problem. I'll talk to mom and dad, they'll definitely agree. Sister-in-law, don't worry about this. But don't worry, I won't let you divorce. You have to believe me. I'll definitely keep you by my side. I looked at Xingyao and said, okay, I'll leave it to you. Let's go home first. Suri looked at me and said, Miss, I'll go make arrangements for my sister first, then I'll go over. No need, I'll call Uncle Bai later. I'll leave everything here to him. You can come with me. I said to Suri, is that appropriate? I didn't even prepare a change of clothes or toiletries. If I really move in, wouldn't it be too abrupt? Suri asked worriedly. Xingyao looked Suri up and down from head to toe. Then she said to him, I see that you have a good body. I have some sample clothes at home that I prepared for the competition. I took a look, and you should be able to wear them. As for underwear and toiletries, I'll ask the nanny to prepare a few more sets. I moved closer to Suri's ear and whispered, you've gotten a bargain. Xinyao's clothes are all first-tier brands. Some of them can't be bought even if you want to. You should be happy. Really? Thank you so much, Miss Duanmu. Suri bowed deeply to Xingyao, a smile blooming on his face. Xingyao looked at Suri's bright smile and blushed. She lowered her head and tugged at the corner of her clothes. If it weren't for my sister-in-law's face, I wouldn't have let you wear the clothes I designed. I gently stroked Xinyao's hair and said, okay, let's go back and see how Xiao Ke is doing. The three of us walked towards the hospital building. While we were chatting, we arrived at the door of Duanmuke's room. We pushed the door open and entered. There was no sign of Duanmuke and Yu Xian. There was only a nurse cleaning the bed where Duanmuke used to lie. When she heard someone enter, she stood up and looked at us. Are you here to visit young Master Duanmu? Xingyao nodded. We're his family. Where did he go? Young Master Duanmu has already finished the discharge procedures and left. What? He's already been discharged? I thought. How could he have just been discharged? The nurse looked at us. Yes, he's already been discharged. He just left. Okay, thank you. I turned and walked out of the room. Xingyao and Suri stood next to me and looked at me, not knowing what to do. Xingyao asked, how could my brother be discharged? It must have been instigated by that bitch. What should we do now? I sighed. Let's go back to Duanmu's house. Okay, let's take my car. It's parked in the parking lot. Suri, you drive. Xingyao took out her car keys and threw them to Suri. Okay. On the way home, I called Uncle Bai and arranged everything for Suri. That way, Suri could stay by my side and work for me. On the way home, Xingyao and I discussed how to talk to Duanmu Tachio and Xiaofingya about the divorce. We were afraid that if we spoke too directly, it would hurt the two old people. We also wanted to suppress the matter, but we were also afraid that Duanmuke wouldn't forgive us. Before we knew it, the car had arrived at Duanmu's house. As soon as we got out of the car, the housekeeper hurried over to greet us. She looked at me and said anxiously, young mistress, you're finally back. Please talk to the young master. Master was so angry that he had another heart attack. What? What's going on? Take me to see him. I didn't have time to care about Suri and Xingyao. I hurried to the living room. After entering the living room, I was shocked by the cold air in front of me. Duanmuke was standing next to the tea table. Yu Xian was also standing next to him. Duanmu Tachio was leaning back on the sofa. Xiaofingya was sitting next to him, gently massaging his heart. The things on the tea table had been thrown to the ground. The living room was a mess. I couldn't care less. I ran to Duanmu Tachio's side and checked his condition. Fortunately, his life wasn't in danger. I looked at Xiao Fengya and asked, Mom, how's Dad? Xiao Fengya wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. She said to me, he's okay. I just gave him a few pills. It seems like his condition isn't as bad as before. I turned around and saw Suri, who had come in with me. I said to him, Suri, come here and give me a hand. Help me carry my father to the car. We'll take him directly to the hospital. Xingyao, follow me and see what's going on. If there's anything, immediately call me. Suri listened to my words and nodded. He walked over and gently helped Duan Mutachio up. Then he walked towards the door. Xingyao also supported Duan Mutachio at his side. At this time, Duan Muke walked to the front and blocked Suri's path. He looked at Suri and said, Put it down. This is our family's business. It's none of your business. Brother, what do you mean by that? Are you going to let our father get sick like this? Xingyao shouted at Duan Mu Quebec. Chapter 91. Duan Muke glanced at Xingyao and said, I'll take care of our father's business. There's no need to let an outsider take care of it. Xiao Fengya stood up and looked at Duan Mu Quebec. You're going too far. How can you talk like that? I've decided. Xingyao, hurry up and take your father to the hospital for a checkup. Keep an eye on him. I'll stay at home. I want to see what your older brother wants to do to this family. It was the first time I saw Xiao Fengya angry. I looked at Xingyao and Suri and said, Girl, hurry up and take our father to the hospital. Suri, drive carefully. Xingyao nodded at me, and then left with Suri carrying Duan Mutachio. After Xiao Fengya watched them leave, she sat back down on the sofa with her arms crossed in front of her chest. She looked at Duan Muke and then at me and said, Xiaoli, come and sit next to me. I looked at her and nodded, then sat next to her. Seeing Xiao Fengya's actions, Duan Muke said with an impatient expression, Mom, I'm going upstairs. Then he turned around and walked upstairs. Stop. You're getting more and more uneducated. Did I allow you to leave? Stand there. Xiao Fengya roared at Duan Mu Quebec. The normally amiable Xiao Fengya was now so fierce. I couldn't believe it. Duan Muke turned to Xiao Fengya and said, Mom, I don't think I did anything wrong. Yes, Dad got a heart attack because of me. But I didn't do it on purpose. I just wanted to take Dad to the hospital. Since you insist on having an outsider take him, then I can't do anything about it. Hearing Duan Muke say those words, I suddenly felt like I didn't know him anymore. Or had he always been such a ruthless person? You don't have to say anything else. You don't have to say anything about the divorce. Your father and I will never agree to it. Xiaoli is not an outsider. She is our legal wife. You don't have the final say in this family. Duan Muke sighed and said, Mom, if you really want to say that, then I can't do anything about it. If you want to acknowledge her, then so be it. I will never acknowledge her as my woman. Do you want to piss me off too? Xiao Fengya stood up from the sofa and pointed at Duan Mu Quebec. You're going too far. I stood up and supported Xiao Fengya. I gently patted her back and comforted her. Mom, don't get too worked up. Your health is more important. I turned and looked at Duan Mu Quebec. Xiao, no matter what, you shouldn't talk to your mother like that. You're hurting her feelings. Duan Muke looked at me and sneered. You don't need to pretend to be nice. My parents might be nice to you, but I won't. Fine. You want to be like this, right? Fine. I'm telling you, you don't want her. We want her. Get out of here. Xiao Fengya pointed upstairs and told him to leave. Yu Xian glanced at us, then pulled Duan Muke upstairs. I watched Yu Xian's every move. It seemed she had put a lot of effort into Duan Muke since Duan Muke woke up. After Duan Muke left, Xiao Fengya sat on the sofa, covered her face and cried. I gently patted her back and said, Mom, don't cry. He definitely didn't do it on purpose. Don't be angry. Xiao Fengya pulled my hand. Xiaoli, I'm sorry. Kair treated you like this. I didn't have the ability to protect you. Mom, don't blame yourself. I know you and Dad took care of me. I hugged Xiao Fengya and leaned on her shoulder. I could feel that her heart was also very sad. After a while, I held her arm and looked at her. Mom, let me help you back to your room to rest. Xiao Fengya looked at me with a tired face and shook her head. I'm worried about your dad. I want to go see him. Mom, I'll go take care of it. You rest first. Dad will be fine. If there's anything, I'll inform you immediately. All right, thank you for your hard work. I helped Xiaofengya back to her room and helped her lie down. Then, I quietly left the room. I returned to the living room and dialed Xinyao's number. Xingyao, it's me. Sister-in-law, I know. How's our family? I sighed and said, Mom had a fight with Duanmu, Quebec. I've just settled her down and put her to sleep. My brother is too immature. How's Dad? I asked directly. Dad's fine. He woke up on the way here. The doctor is doing a thorough examination. There's no big problem. Once the doctor confirms it, we can go back. Thanks to Suri's fast and steady driving, we arrived at the hospital very quickly. That's good. I'll leave Dad to you. There's a lot going on at home, so I won't go over. If there's anything, you can keep an eye on him. If there's anything, call me. Don't worry, sister-in-law. Take care of yourself. Don't let that bitch bully you. Okay, I got it. You go do what you need to do. I'm hanging up. I hung up the phone and sighed. Luckily, nothing happened to Duanmu Tachio. I sat on the sofa and thought about what had happened in the past 2 days. It felt like a dream. At this moment, Yu Xian walked in front of me. She stood across from me and asked, How's Uncle? I raised my head and looked at her. Then, I raised my head and looked at the ceiling. He's fine. That's good. Then Yu Xian sat across from me and looked at me without moving. I saw that she didn't want to leave. I stood up and walked to the door. Yu Xian suddenly stopped me. Wait a minute. I want to talk to you. I stopped and didn't look at her. I don't have anything to say to you. Don't you think that Duanmu K's attitude towards you has changed? Yu Xian's words pierced my heart. I turned and looked at Yu Xian. I know. It's not a big deal. As long as he's happy. Yu Xian looked at me. Why are you so calm all of a sudden? Don't you think that I'm the one who instigated this? I sneered and looked at Yu Xian. So what if you're the one who instigated this? Now that he's already treating me like this, what can I do to change it? There's no other way. It doesn't matter if you're the one who instigated this, or if it's his own intention. I don't want to think about it anymore. Then, will you still stay in Duanmu's house? I don't think so. Didn't Duanmu K say that he wants a divorce? I respect his decision, although it might harm the interests of both families. I don't want to wrong him, nor do I want to wrong myself. Being with someone who doesn't love me, my heart will be very tired. Is that what you really think? Yu Xian looked at me in disbelief. I shook my head and looked at her. No, but what can I do? Isn't this the ending you want? Chapter 92. I looked at Yu Xian and said, Then you can naturally walk to Xiao Kei's side and become his woman. It's the best outcome for you, him and me. Yu Xian smiled and looked at me. Haha. I don't know how to answer you. If that's what you want, then thank you for helping us. I sneered and looked at her. You're welcome. I turned around and didn't look at her. I walked towards the garden. I tried to hold back the tears in my eyes, but they still flowed down from the corners. I walked to the deepest part of the garden and stood next to the rose pool that Duanmu K had built for me. Looking at the beautiful roses in the pool, my heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. I sat on a rattan chair across from the rose pool, and my tears couldn't stop flowing. I recalled everything that had happened with Duanmu Quebec. I still loved him very much. Although he didn't remember me, I still couldn't forget him. Your heart hurts, right? A man's voice came from the deepest part of the garden. I turned my head and looked in the direction of the voice. Han Hao walked out from behind the tree. He looked at me, his eyes full of tenderness. Why are you here? I asked, looking at him in surprise. I've been here for a while. He walked towards me. Oh, what are you doing here? I was waiting for Xinyao, but she told me that she was at the hospital with Uncle Duanmu. She asked me to go over. I was going to go over, but I just happened to run into you. Han Hao walked in front of me and looked at me without blinking. His scent was so familiar, and his eyes were so gentle. I didn't dare to continue looking at him. I was afraid that I would be trapped in his eyes. I said, Then you should go quickly. The hospital is very busy. I don't think she can handle it alone. Isn't there still Suri? You know him? I looked at Han Hao in disbelief. Han Hao smiled and looked at me. Xinyao will tell me everything. She already introduced her to me. She said she's your personal bodyguard. Yes, he's very reliable. She didn't know why. But after she said that, the atmosphere became even more awkward. Han Hao kept looking at me. But he didn't say anything. I felt more and more embarrassed. So I tried to find a topic to talk about. You should go and find Xinyao. You still love Duamuke, don't you? Han Hao looked at me and said softly. What? Although his voice was very low, I heard it clearly, but I had to pretend that I didn't hear it. Han Hao suddenly pressed on my shoulder and said, even if he has forgotten you, you don't want to erase him from your heart, do you? I understood what Han Hao meant. He still had feelings for me. I looked at Han Hao and said, that's right. I still have him in my heart. I still love him. I can't forget him. But he hurt you so deeply. Do you still miss him? Han Hao grabbed my shoulder and roared at me. I lifted my head and looked at Han Hao. Yes, I'm that cheap. I'm willing to stay by his side. No matter what he does to me, I will always be with him. Han Hao suddenly hugged me and buried his head in my shoulder. I could feel him sobbing. Han Hao hugged me tightly. I didn't know what to do. Leaning into Han Hao's embrace, I smelled his familiar scent. My eyes became moist. Han Hao whispered to me. Why is it that no matter what happens, you would rather hurt yourself than hurt others? Why are you so stupid? I let Han Hao hug me and didn't let go. I said softly, it's nothing. I'll get used to it. Han Hao let go of me. He looked at me and said, just think of it as being selfish for yourself, okay? Even if it's just this once, you won't be hurt like this. I looked at Han Hao and smiled. You know, I can't do it. I will never be able to do it. Han Hao's eyes were still glistening with tears. He looked at me, his eyes full of tenderness. Looking at his handsome face, I couldn't help but raise my hand and gently touch his handsome face. I didn't know why, but in front of him, I had always pretended to be strong, but he had always seen through me. Han Hao hugged me and cupped my face. He kissed me deeply on the lips. The moment he kissed me, tears streamed down my cheeks. At that moment, it was as if time had stopped. I couldn't feel anything around me. All my attention was on this passionate kiss. Suddenly, I thought of something and pushed Han Hao away. Han Hao looked at me in surprise. I didn't look at him. I turned around and wiped the tears off my face. Han Hao suddenly hugged me from behind. I grabbed his arm and tried to break free from his embrace. Han Hao hugged me tightly to prevent me from running away. He said to me, do you still want to run away? Han Hao, let go of me. How can you face Xinyao like this? I retorted, I don't like her at all. You're the one who always wanted me to be with her. You know who I like. I've always listened to you. But this time, I don't want to listen anymore. When I saw how Xiaokei treated you, I felt terrible. Since you two have decided to divorce, I can officially pursue you. Han Hao suddenly hugged me and put me on the rattan chair by the rose pond. I sat on the rattan chair while he supported himself with both hands. I couldn't move. He stared at me with a serious face. Han Hao, I treat you as my good friend. If you really do this, we can't even be friends anymore. I had no choice but to threaten him. I thought this method would work on Han Hao, but he stood in front of me and looked at me indifferently. His eyes looked like he wanted to eat me. He suddenly whispered in my ear, I can wait. I can wait until you two divorce. As long as you two divorce, I will do everything I can to pursue you. I don't believe in giving you to others. I looked at Han Hao angrily and said, Han Hao, I'm already in a mess. Don't add to it. I won't be with you. Whether it's for Xinyao, Xiaokei, or for other reasons, I won't be with you. Don't even think about it. Han Hao sneered and said, it doesn't matter. What I want to do is my business. What you want to do is your business. What I can promise you is that I will never let you down. Hearing him say that, I suddenly remembered what Duanmuke had said to me. I had said to him, I don't believe in promises anymore. Promises can be changed at any time. I will never believe it. Chapter 93. Han Hao looked at me and said, Shaoli, can you trust me one more time? It's not a matter of trust. Han Hao, I understand your feelings for me, but I can't accept it. I'm sorry. Are you worried about Xinyao? I shook my head and looked at him. No. No matter who it is, or what it is, I won't accept you. Seeing my firm attitude, Hanhao sighed. He let go of me and looked at me. Okay, I respect your choice. I'll wait until you're divorced, then I'll pursue you. This is my business. You don't have to worry about it. Don't you want Duanmuke and me to be happy? I suddenly felt that Hanhao was very persistent. No, I just want you to be happy. I also want you to give me a chance to be happy. I didn't want to think about anything else. I felt that we shouldn't talk about this topic anymore. I suddenly remembered that Xinyao was still looking for him. So I said, let's talk about it later. You go and accompany Xinyao. I have to go back. Hanhao reached out and held me in his arms. He whispered to me, okay, whatever you say. I'll go find her. You take good care of yourself. If there's anything, you must call me. I leaned into Hanhao's arms and nodded. Hanhao cupped my face and kissed my forehead. Then he left. I didn't know why, but this intimate action made me subconsciously accept him. Maybe my feelings for Hanhao had never disappeared. I stood by the rose pond for a while, looking at the garden full of blooming flowers. All sorts of feelings welled up in my heart. I didn't want to face it, but I still had to face it. I walked to the living room. I didn't know what unexpected things would happen when I saw Duanmuke in my room. I passed through the living room and headed upstairs. Xiaofeng's bedroom door was closed. It seemed like she was still resting. This was good. If I really had an argument with Duanmuke, I wouldn't have to worry about it affecting her mood. I walked to the bedroom door. The entire corridor was silent. There was no one in sight. The usually lively home had become lifeless. I pushed the door open and walked into the bedroom. As soon as I entered the room, I saw Duanmuke lying naked with his eyes closed. I didn't say anything and gently closed the door. I didn't want to wake him up. I walked to the wardrobe by the bed and gently opened it, then took out my clothes one by one, because I knew, with Duanmuke's personality, he definitely wouldn't allow me to sleep on the same bed as him in this room. I took a few coats and was about to turn around and put them on the chair next to the bed, when I suddenly saw Duanmuke sitting by the bed, looking at me with a serious face. I didn't have time to react. I was scared and took 2 steps back, bumping into the wardrobe. My legs went soft, and I sat on the floor. I lifted my head to look at Duanmuke. He was still sitting on the bed, glaring at me. If it had been in the past, Duanmuke would have rushed to me and hugged me. But now his attitude towards me was clear. I wasn't that important anymore. I sneered and stood up with the help of the wardrobe. I glanced at him and turned around to take out my clothes. After a while, I was almost done with all the clothes. I started to take out my luggage and put the clothes inside one by one. Duanmuke just sat in front of me and looked at me without moving. There were a few times when I glanced at him, but his gaze was very determined. He didn't look away from me at all. I didn't feel uncomfortable either. I only lowered my head and tidied up the clothes. When I was halfway through, Duanmuke suddenly grabbed my hand. I lifted my head and looked at him with a puzzled face. He snatched the clothes from my hand and tore them without saying anything. My temper flared up. I shouted at Duanmuke, "What are you doing?" He didn't pay attention to me. He reached for the second piece of clothing and tore it. I didn't know what he wanted to do. I looked at him angrily. "Stop. Don't touch my clothes." Duanmuke glared at me. He grabbed another piece of clothing and tore it in front of me. I didn't know what he wanted to do. Seeing that he was about to tear my clothes again, I hurriedly grabbed his hand and tried to stop him. However, Duanmuke was too strong. He flung my arm away and threw me onto the bed. He turned around and grabbed the clothes in the suitcase, tearing them one by one. I tried to press his arm down again, but he swung me away. He suddenly reached for the gown that he'd bought for me. My heart skipped a beat, and I jumped off the bed. Before he could grab the gown, I grabbed it and hugged it in my arms. I leaned against the wardrobe and looked at him in horror. Duanmuke stood up from the bed. He looked at me with a fierce gaze. I retreated step by step until I reached the door. There was nowhere else to go. I hugged the dress tightly and looked at him. "Not this one. You can't tear it." Duanmuke extended his hand in front of me. He said calmly, "Give it to me." I shook my head. My tears were about to fall. I looked at him and said, "Not this one. For the last time, give it to me." Duanmuke looked at me and said slowly. I suddenly felt fear. I hid the gown behind me and shook my head desperately at Duanmu Quebec. This was the gown that he had given me. It was the thing that I treasured the most. I couldn't watch it get destroyed. Duanmuke walked in front of me. He grabbed my collar with both hands. Although I was very scared, I tried my best to protect the dress. Duanmuke grabbed the two corners of my collar and pulled with all his strength. My top was torn by him. I was only left with my underwear. I couldn't help but cry. I looked at Duanmuke and said, "No. Are you giving it to me or not?" He threw the torn dress to the side and looked at me as he said, "Duanmuke, I'm begging you, okay? Let me go. This is the most precious thing I have. I'm begging you." It was the first time I had begged someone so humbly. I didn't know why. Looking at the cruel Duanmuke in front of me, he didn't just tear my dress, he tore my heart. Duanmuke didn't stop. He reached out and tore my dress. Besides my underwear, there was nothing covering my body. Duanmuke was too strong. When he tore the dress, he made a few red spots on my body. I squatted on the ground and leaned against the corner of the wall. The gown was stuck in the crevice. To me, this humiliation was worse than death. Duanmuke squatted down. He lifted my chin and looked at me. "This is what you get for not listening to me. Don't challenge my bottom line. Give me that dress." Chapter 94. I looked at Duanmuke in fear. I was afraid that he would tear off my remaining clothes again. He was squatting in front of me. I didn't know what to do. Just then, Duanmuke's phone rang. The moment he turned his head, it was a rare opportunity. I suddenly stood up and reached out to open the door and run out. But reality often deviated from the plan. Just as my hand touched the doorknob, Duanmuke suddenly pressed the door shut. He pressed me against the door. I was so scared that I quickly hugged the dress in my arms. I didn't dare to look back at him. Duanmuke put his head next to my ear. He said, "What? You want to run? Where do you think you can run to?" I closed my eyes and said loudly, "Let me out." My voice was trembling. I knew that I was timid, and I was trying my best to pretend that I had a backbone. Duanmuke had one hand on the door. His other hand didn't reach forward to grab the dress. His hand reached for my neck. I thought to myself, does he want to strangle me to death? But he didn't do that. His hand slid across my neck and wandered to my back. Finally, his hand stopped at the clasp of my bra. My body trembled. Just then, I heard Duanmuke's cold laughter. He said to me, "What's wrong?" "Scared. But it's too late." He pulled hard, and the clasp came open. I clutched my chest tightly and squatted down. I was on the verge of breaking down. I didn't know what to do. Duanmuke's phone was still ringing. He didn't pick it up. I could feel him standing behind me. I was squatting in front of him. I couldn't resist at all. I didn't answer. I let the tears flow down my face and onto the floor. They fell onto the dress. Because of my struggle, the dress was already ruined. Duanmuke stood behind me and casually picked up my clothes from the suitcase. He tore them off one by one and said to me calmly, "Give it to me. It doesn't belong to you." I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my heart. I stood up and turned to look at Duanmu Quebec. He was standing right in front of me, very close to me. He might not have had time to react to my actions. He looked at me with a puzzled expression. I clutched my chest with one hand and hugged the dress with the other. I looked at him and said, "When are you going to stop being crazy? Do you want to ruin this dress that badly? Fine. I'll fulfill your wish." I hugged the dress and walked to the window. I opened the window and threw the dress out of the window. The moment I saw the dress fall, my heart broke into pieces. I clutched my chest with both hands and sat on the ground by the window. Even if my tears fell, I couldn't make a sound. I looked out of the window and looked at the beautiful garden. I also felt that the world was gray. Duanmuke walked over to me. He stood beside me and looked at me. He said, "Have you finally exploded? Even if you can't bear it, you have to bear it. In my eyes, you're not even a toy that I can vent on. Do you understand? Miss Lung?" I turned my head and looked at Duan Mukei's calm expression. I sneered and ignored him. I stood up and walked to the wardrobe. I rummaged through the messy suitcase, looking for clothes that could still be worn. However, most of them had been torn apart by Duan Mukei. I flipped through them randomly. At this moment, Duan Mukei suddenly appeared beside me. He grabbed my arm and threw me onto the bed. Before I could react, his whole body was on top of me. I was so scared that I quickly covered my chest and shouted at him. "What are you doing?" Duan Mukei forcefully grabbed my arms and pressed me onto the bed. My upper body was completely naked in front of him. My legs kicked wildly. Duan Mukei pressed down on my arms and looked at me. "Don't move. What do you want? If you hate me, I'll leave. Can't I? Why do you have to torture me?" Gradually, I lost the strength to struggle and let him press on top of me. Games need to have a certain amount of fun. Look at you now. You look like a defeated pet. I don't know why, but I suddenly feel very excited. Duan Mukei lowered his head and gently bit my collarbone. "Ah!" I cried out. He lifted his head and kissed me on the lips. The sudden kiss made me feel very uncomfortable. It wasn't a kiss of love. It felt like he was sucking my blood. My whole body felt uncomfortable. I couldn't resist and let Duan Mukei kiss me. He used one hand to grab both of my arms, and the other hand to touch my body without restraint. I wriggled my body, resisting with all my might. I didn't know how many tears flowed from the corners of my eyes, but the hair on my temples was already wet. Seeing that I was resisting so fiercely, Duan Mukei raised his head and stared at me. "Resisting is useless. I advise you to be obedient. Don't make any useless resistance." "Why? You don't have any feelings for me. Why did you touch me?" I didn't care about anything else and questioned Duan Mukei. "Why? That's the dress I bought for you. You threw away my things. What else do you have to compensate me with? I took your body. That's too cheap for you." Duan Mukei looked at me, his hands slowly reaching between my legs. I resisted with all my might. Although I was afraid, I still said to Duan Mukei, "You were the one who wanted to tear it away. I just wanted to protect it. That's my thing. It's my memory. What right do you have to be so overbearing?" Duan Mukei's face revealed an evil smile. He looked at me and said, "It's too late. It's too late to return it to me. Right now, I'm more interested in your body." He reached out and took off all my defenses. "Let go of me, Duan Mukei!" I screamed hoarsely. Duan Mukei grabbed my face and looked at me. "I'm telling you, you and I aren't divorced yet. You're still my legal wife. I can do whatever I want to you. No one can stop me." I lay naked on the bed, hugging the quilt as my tears flowed uncontrollably. I didn't know how many times I had cried. My eyes were red and swollen, and my body was covered in bruises. They were all traces of Duan Mukei's scratches. It really looked like I had just been violated. My hair was disheveled, and other than the pain, I couldn't feel what had just happened. Chapter 95. I rested on the bed for a while. It was already evening, so I slowly climbed out of bed. Looking at the clothes on the floor that had been torn by Duan Mukei, I couldn't find anything to cover my body. I also looked through the wardrobe. There were only thick clothes left, but they weren't suitable for me to wear right now. With no other choice, I could only find a random shirt that belonged to Duan Mukei and put it on. Luckily, his shirt size was bigger than mine, so it could cover the places that needed to be covered. After putting on the clothes, I was too embarrassed to ask the housekeeper to come up and clean up the room. I could only pack up all the torn clothes and put them at the door, waiting for the housekeeper to come and take them away. I walked downstairs and saw Xiao Fengya sitting on the sofa in the living room. After resting, her complexion had improved a lot, but she still looked very dispirited. I sighed and walked over to sit next to her. "Ma, how was your rest?" Xiao Fengya looked at me and nodded slightly. "I just woke up and sat down in the living room. I'm fine now. I feel much better. How's Dad?" Xiao Fengya asked me worriedly. I held her hand and said, "Ma, it's okay. Xinya has already made arrangements. You don't need to worry. Dad should be back tomorrow or the day after." Xiao Fengya held my hand. She suddenly saw the bruise on my neck that had been scratched by Duan Mukei. She reached out and gently touched it. With a puzzled expression she asked me, Xiaoli, how did you get this? I turned my head to avoid Xiaofengya's eyes. I tightly gripped my collar, not daring to let her see. Xiaofengya suddenly grabbed my hand and pulled up my sleeve. She looked at my wrist and the bruises all over my arm. She looked at me and said, Xiaoli, what happened? Why are there so many bruises on your body? Could it be? My tears flowed down again. I wiped them away and said to Xiaofengya, Ma, I'm fine. You must be hungry. I'll make something for you to eat. Then I stood up and walked towards the kitchen, but Xiaofengya grabbed my arm. Because she accidentally touched my wound, I cried out in pain. Xiaofengya quickly let go and looked at me. Sorry, I didn't notice. I was afraid that Xiaofengya would worry, so I turned and smiled at her. Ma, it's okay. These little bruises are nothing. Xiaofengya sat down on the sofa. She picked up the phone and dialed a number. She motioned for me to wait for a moment. I sat next to her and quietly accompanied her. After the call went through, I heard Xiaofengya say, Xiniao, it's Ma. How's Pa? It's good that he's fine. Thank you for your trouble. I'll go to your closet and get a set of clothes for your sister-in-law. Don't ask me what happened. I'll tell you the details when you get back. Bye. Xiaofengya hung up the phone and pulled me by the hand to Xiniao's bedroom upstairs. I knew that Xiaofengya really cared about me, but in my heart I refused. I followed behind Xiaofengya and said, Ma, there's really no need. I'll just wear this. There's no need to trouble yourself. Xiaofengya didn't look back. She pulled my hand and said, How can you just wear a shirt? I already told Xiniao that she has a lot of clothes. Xiaofengya pulled me into Xiniao's room and closed the door behind her. She opened Xiniao's closet and carefully looked through the clothes that would fit me. She looked at me and asked in a soft voice, What happened? Why do you have so many wounds on your body? Why are you wearing Kair's clothes? I thought for a moment, then told her about Duanmukei's incident. After hearing what had happened, Xiaofengya suddenly stopped what she was doing. She turned around and hugged me in her arms. She gently stroked my hair and said, Xiaoli, I'm sorry. Ma didn't protect you well and let you suffer so much. I cried hard, as if something that had been suppressed for a long time had finally been released. I said in a soft voice, Ma, it's okay. It's not your fault, and it's not his fault. Xiaofengya cupped my face and looked at me. Ma just wants to ask you one thing. Can you not hate him? He wasn't like this before. I don't know why he became like this. Xiaofengya's eyes were also wet, and tears flowed down the corners of her eyes. I reached out and gently wiped the tears from her face. I looked at her and nodded. Ma, I don't hate him because I love him. Xiaofengya stroked my hair and said, Good girl. Let's continue to pick out clothes. Xiaofengya picked out a few clothes from the wardrobe for me to choose from. I casually chose a simple and convenient dress. When I was changing my clothes, Xiaofengya saw all the scars on my body. I could feel her eyes were full of pity. I was very willing to be with her. When my mother wasn't by my side, she gave me the warmth of a mother's love, which made me feel not so cold anymore. After changing clothes, I was going to go to the kitchen, but Xiaofengya insisted that I rest well and pushed me out of the kitchen. Helpless, I could only stare blankly in the living room. I suddenly remembered that when I was fighting over clothes with Duanmukei, I had casually thrown the dress he gave me out the window. I didn't know if someone would pick it up. I walked out of the room and walked towards the bedroom window. Just as I turned the corner, I saw Yu Xian standing there holding my dress. Oh no, I was still a step too late. I quickly walked in front of Yu Xian. She looked at me in shock for a moment, but immediately recovered her usual calmness. I raised my hand and pointed at the dress in her hands. This dress is mine. Please give it back to me. Yu Xian glanced at the dress, then looked at me. Oh, I thought you didn't want it anymore? My heart trembled. Could it be that she had overheard our conversation? I calmed down and looked at her. No, please give it back to me. Yu Xian didn't intend to give the dress back to me. She held the dress and looked at me. This dress is very important to you. It's the dress that Duanmugij gave you, right? Thinking about it, it's funny. On his birthday, he only bought me a dress, but he gave you a custom-made dress. This difference really makes me jealous. What do you want? She was still holding a grudge. It seemed she wouldn't let it go. Yu Xian smiled and said, I don't want anything. It originally belonged to me. Now that it's in my hands, do you think I'll give it back to you? I was disgusted by Yu Xian's face. I rushed in front of her and reached out to grab the dress and pull it towards me. She was startled and hugged the dress tightly. I looked at her and said, hurry up and give it back to me. After saying that, I grabbed the dress with my other hand and pulled it towards me. Yu Xian didn't let go. She also grabbed the dress tightly. Chapter 96. The two of us held onto the gown tightly, neither of us letting go. Just as the struggle was getting intense, I pulled with all my strength. Yu Xian lost her balance and was almost pulled down by me. Suddenly, Duanmuke appeared and hugged Yu Xian. He reached out and pushed my shoulder, pushing me to the ground. My elbow hit the ground, and it was already bruised. I didn't know what to say anymore. I endured the pain and raised my head to look at Duanmuke. He was hugging Yu Xian tightly. Yu Xian touched her wrist as if she was injured. Her expression became very aggrieved. I was the one who was injured. But why did it seem like she was the one who was wronged? Duanmuke looked at Yu Xian with concern and asked softly, Xian, how are you? Are you hurt? Yu Xian shook her head and said to Duanmuke, Duanmuke, I'm fine. Luckily you appeared in time and hugged me. Otherwise I would have fallen to the ground. Duanmuke hugged Yu Xian. He turned his head to look at me, who was still lying on the ground, and said, apologize to her. I looked at him with a puzzled expression and said, what did you say? Duanmuke raised his voice and said to me one word at a time. I said it. Apologize to her. He pointed at Yu Xian. He wanted me to apologize to Yu Xian. Was he crazy? She was the one who was in the wrong, not me. Why did he want me to apologize to her? I held my arm and endured the pain as I stood up. Looking at the gown on the ground, I walked forward and picked it up. I patted the dust off the gown and looked at Duanmuke. I didn't do anything wrong. I won't apologize. Duanmuke let go of Yu Xian and walked in front of me. He looked at me and said, are you Red Minghui all so uncultured? If I hadn't hugged Yu Xian, she would have fallen to the ground. Isn't that your fault? Shut up. You can talk about me and scold me, but you can't insult us, Red Minghui. I looked at Duanmuke and said firmly. Duanmuke suddenly grabbed my collar. His face was getting closer and closer to mine. He looked at me and said, it seems like you haven't suffered enough injuries. Otherwise, you wouldn't be at a loss when talking to me. Let me tell you, in this house, it's your turn to speak loudly to me. He grabbed my wrist with his other hand and gripped it even tighter. I held the gown tightly with my other hand and closed my eyes. Other than pain, I didn't feel anything else. Duanmuke suddenly let go of me. I opened my eyes and looked at him. He was holding his head and squatting on the ground. Yu Xian ran to his side and supported him. Duanmuke, what's wrong? Do you want to see a doctor? Duanmuke forced himself to stand up. He shook his head and said softly, it's nothing. It's nothing serious. I don't know why, but when I see her, I feel like there's something hidden in my head. My head hurts like it's being pricked by needles. Duanmuke, let's go back and rest. Calm down. Yu Xian supported him. She glanced at me with a blaming gaze, as if it was all my fault. Okay. Yu Xian helped Duanmuke to the living room. Finally, they disappeared from my sight. I gently touched my scraped elbow. There was a lot of blood, so it really hurt. But no matter what, I was happy that I got the gown. I hugged the gown and walked back to the living room. Xiao Fengya happened to come out of the kitchen. She looked at me, covered in dust and my bleeding elbow. She quickly pulled me into her bedroom. Xiao Fengya took out the first aid kit and hurriedly dressed my wound. As Xiao Fengya bandaged my wound, she looked at me and said, Care is too much. It's all because his father and I have spoiled him. Now he's even more out of control. I hugged the gown and sat on the chair. I sighed. I looked at Xiao Fengya and said, Mom, I want to ask you for a favor. Sure. What is it? I looked at the gown and then back at Xiao Fengya. Mom, can you keep this gown for me? When I leave Duanmu's house, I'll take it with me. Xiao Fengya nodded and looked at me. That's not a problem. But Xiaoli, I want to ask you something from your heart. Are you sure you want to divorce Kair? I put the gown on the sofa and pulled Xiao Fengya's hand. Mom, it seems like we can't change this. He doesn't remember me, and he's becoming more and more hostile towards me. I think it's good for him to be with you, Xian. It's better to let go. It's better for everyone. I looked at Xiao Fengya's serious expression. I knew that she was worried about the business deal between our two families. I smiled and said to her, Mom, don't worry. I'll talk to my parents. They won't make things difficult for you and Dad. Don't worry. Silly girl, you can't be thinking that Kair and you Xian have some kind of relationship, right? Xiao Fengya looked at me with disbelief. I smiled coldly and looked at Xiao Fengya. Mom, I don't know about that. Of course, it's not that important. I just need to do what I need to do in the next 15 days. That's enough. Mom, I'll leave the gown to you. I'll go out first. After I left Xiao Fengya's bedroom, the housekeeper called me to dinner. I told her I wouldn't be eating. I went upstairs to my bedroom. There was no one in the room. I didn't know where Duanmuke had gone, but it was good that he wasn't here. I had time to tidy up my clothes. After tidying up for a while, I didn't have much left except for the clothes that Duanmuke had torn. The big suitcase only contained a few pieces of autumn and winter clothing. I carried the suitcase to the bedroom door. When I looked back, I thought of all the moments I had with Duanmuke here. My heart was sad, but it didn't hurt as much. After being hurt so many times, I didn't feel anything. As soon as I opened the door with the suitcase, I saw Duanmuke standing at the door, looking at me with a serious face. It was too late to dodge, so I subconsciously hid the suitcase behind me. I looked at him, afraid that he would snatch my only luggage. Duanmuke looked at me from head to toe, but he didn't say anything. I didn't know what he wanted to do, but I knew that I couldn't look at him for too long. I looked at him, then carried the suitcase and walked past him. He didn't stop me. I couldn't help but sigh in my heart. Fortunately, there wasn't any conflict. Just as I was rejoicing in my misfortune, Duanmuke suddenly stopped me. Stop! I stopped, but I didn't dare to look back at him. I thought, oh no, he won't do something again, will he? Duanmuke walked to my side. I could feel his fierce eyes staring at me. Chapter 97. I didn't speak, and I didn't dare to raise my head to look at him. Duanmuke reached out and snatched the suitcase from my hand. He picked it up and weighed it. Then he looked at me and said, What? You still have so much luggage? I jerked my head up and looked at Duanmuke. I don't have any luggage. That's an empty suitcase. Duanmuke looked at me and said, You don't have any luggage? I reached out and tried to snatch the suitcase from Duanmuke's hand, but he hid it behind his back. Then he reached out and pushed my shoulder. I lost my balance and took 2 steps back. I looked at Duanmuke angrily. Well, he didn't have me in his heart anymore, so it was natural for him to treat me this way. Duanmuke looked at me and sneered. He put my suitcase on the stairs, then looked at me. He lifted his leg and kicked my suitcase down the stairs. I looked at Duanmuke and shouted angrily, Duanmuke, what are you doing? Duanmuke rushed in front of me and grabbed my collar. He stared at me and said, Who gave you the guts to talk to me so loudly? I shook off Duanmuke's hand that was grabbing my collar. I looked at him and said, Xiaoke, I've had enough. I don't care if you torture me or wrongly accuse me. If you have something to say, can't you just tell me directly? Do you have to treat me like this? Duanmuke stood there and looked at me. What I want to do is my business. If you want to accept it, then accept it. If you don't want to accept it, then endure it. This is my principle. Do you understand? Cold glaze. Duanmuke arrogantly raised his head. His eyes seemed to be mocking me. Hearing him say that, my temper got worse. I looked at Duanmuke and shouted, Duanmuke, I fell in love with you before. So much so that I could endure everything you did to me today. I could use my love for you to make up for it. But now I've seen through myself. You have completely forgotten about me. In your eyes, I'm worse than a stranger. You don't need to give me another 15 days. I've had enough. I won't endure it anymore from now on. You and I will cut off all ties. And from now on, we won't know each other. I glared at Duan Muke, walked past him, and headed towards the stairs. Duan Muke suddenly grabbed my arm and said to me, I think I told you before that you can't do whatever you want. You are still my, Duan Muke's woman. Go back to your room. Duan Muke pulled my arm and pulled me towards the bedroom. I pulled Duan Muke's arm and struggled. I shouted at Duan Muke, let go of me. You don't have the right to restrict my freedom. Let go of me. The sound of our argument attracted Xiaofingya and Yu Xian. The two of them stood in the living room and saw the two of us tearing each other apart. Xiaofingya shouted at Duan Muke, what are you doing? Stop it. She was about to rush forward. I found an opportunity to shake off Duan Muke and walk towards the stairs. Duan Muke reached out and grabbed me. I turned around and pushed his chest. I shouted at Duan Muke, that's enough. You're going too far. Let go of me. You want to leave? It's not that easy. Duan Muke reached out and pushed me. I lost my balance and slipped. I fell down the stairs. Shaoli. I heard Xiaofingya's voice. I fell down the stairs and landed in the living room. Xiaofingya ran to my side and helped me up. She looked at me worriedly and said, Shaoli, how are you? Don't scare Mom. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Tears flowed out of Xiaofingya's eyes. I raised my hand with difficulty and touched Xiaofingya's face. I forced out a smile and said, Mom, I'm fine. After I finished speaking, my hand went limp and my consciousness gradually blurred. However, the last thing that entered my eyes was Duan Muke's anxious face. If only he could still remember me and still love me as much as he did in the past, how great would that be? I don't know how long I slept, but I felt like I had a long dream. When I opened my eyes again, I was already in a hospital room. My parents and Xiaofingya were standing next to the bed, but Duan Muke was nowhere to be seen. Seeing that I had woken up, everyone was very excited. I looked at my parents. My mother's face was still glistening with tears, and my father's face was also serious. It seemed like they already knew the truth. I looked at my parents, then looked at Xiaofingya and said, Mom, I want to talk to my parents. Xiaofingya stared blankly for a moment, then smiled and said, Okay, I'll go get some food for you. After saying that, Xiaofingya walked out of the room. My parents gathered around my bed. My mother took my hand and asked, Shaoli, how are you feeling? How could you be so careless and fall down the stairs? You've made your parents so worried. Mom, I'm fine. Aren't I fine? I smiled and looked at my mother. My mother sighed and looked at me. Shaoli, what do you want to talk to me and your father about? I hesitated for a moment, then looked at my parents and said, Mom, Dad, do you already know? My father glared at me and said, If this hadn't happened, how long would you have hidden it from us? I pursed my lips and looked at my father. Dad, I just didn't know how to tell you. That's right, Shaoli. You shouldn't have hidden it from us. Do you know how worried your father and I were when we heard that you had fallen down the stairs? Without you by our side, I always felt that I couldn't take care of you. Your father and I have always been worried about you. My mother took my hand and wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. I held my mother's hand tightly and looked at her. Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. I'm fine now. I'll pay more attention in the future. At that moment, the door of the room opened and the doctor walked in. He looked at me, then flipped through the medical records and reports in his hands. My mother looked at the doctor and asked softly, Doctor, how is my daughter? The doctor looked at me, then looked at my mother. She's 4 weeks pregnant. Did you know that? What? My parents and I were shocked. I looked at the doctor and asked, How is that possible? How come I didn't realize that I was pregnant? The doctor closed the medical records and looked at me. Maybe it's because you've been very emotional recently, so you didn't notice. It's not too late to know now. You should rest well. We just finished the examination, and your body is too weak. Chapter 98. Mother looked at the doctor and said, Doctor, she fell down the stairs. Is she all right? Did she hurt the baby in her belly? The doctor said, I just gave Miss Lung a thorough examination. Aside from some superficial injuries, Everything else is normal. The baby in her belly is also very healthy. If Mr. Lung and Mrs. Lung don't think it's safe, I'll arrange for the nurse to prescribe you some nutrition medicine to protect the baby. Thank you. Mother's excited face became a bit red. The doctor nodded and left the room. Mother took my hand and said, Xiaoli, that's great. You have a baby. I smiled and looked at Mother. Yes, that's great. I'll be careful in the future. I gently touched my belly. It was incredible. There was a baby here that would be born in a few months. This is also very good. If the Duanmu family knows, the Duanmu K won't divorce you so easily. Mother was very excited. My face gradually became serious. I looked at Mother and said, Mom, I don't want to tell the Duanmu K and the Duanmu family about this yet. Why? Isn't this a good thing? If the Duanmu K knows you're pregnant, he'll also love you. Don't tell me he won't take responsibility? Mother said somewhat angrily. Father walked in front of me. He looked at me and said, Xiaoli is right. It's best if we don't let them know about this. Perhaps it'll be more troublesome if they know. Then are we going to hide this until the end? But after a long time, the belly will show. Won't we be unable to hide it anymore? I took Mother's hand and said, Mom, I want to give birth to this child. Since the Duanmu K wants to divorce me, he probably won't try to keep me. I want to spend these 10 days in peace. After the divorce procedures are completed, I'll go home and give birth to the child. That's good, but I'm still worried. I'm afraid that Duanmu K will do something to hurt you again, his mother said worriedly. The father held the mother's shoulder and said, Don't worry. When Duanmu Tachio is discharged from the hospital, I'll call him and tell him to take good care of my daughter. If anything happens to my daughter, I'll immediately terminate the agreement. Dad, if I divorce Duanmu K, does that mean the agreement is invalid? She suddenly felt that she had let down the red Minghui and the development of the family. My father looked at me and said, As long as he can guarantee your safety until the divorce, I will draft another agreement to continue your marriage contract. In the past, I was too selfish, too stubborn, and used you as a bargaining chip in my career. But now that I know how much you've been hurt, I suddenly feel like a selfish father. I didn't take good care of you at all. I feel like I failed in my duty. I had never heard my father say such heartwarming words to me before. I smiled at him and said, Dad, I'm not good enough. I didn't do what I should have done. Thank you for being so understanding. Thank you for agreeing to take care of me and my future baby. My mother patted my head and said, Silly child, why are you being so polite to your own parents? As long as you're well, we're happy. At that moment, Xiaofingya pushed open the door to the room. She walked in and smiled at us. What are you talking about? You look so happy. Nothing much. You're back. My mother stood up and walked over to greet her. Xiaofingya nodded and looked at my mother. Yes, I just went to see Li Xiong. The doctor said that he'll be discharged tomorrow. My mother and father looked at each other. My mother looked at Xiaofingya and said, Xiaofingya, I have something to trouble you with. Xiaofingya took my mother's hand and said, Sis, we're so close. If there's anything you need, you can just tell me directly. It's like this. Xiaoli's father and I are very worried about her. We know the details of the situation. Since Xiao Ke wants a divorce, Xiaoli isn't bad either. Our family has acquiesced. We just hope that in the next 10 days, you and Li Xiong can protect our child. Don't let her get hurt or wronged again. Our heart aches for our child. Xiaofingya thought for a moment. She looked at my mother and said, Sis, don't worry. When Xiaoli is discharged, I'll let her rest in the guest room. That way, she won't have any conflicts with Ke. As for Ke, we'll let his father teach him a lesson. What do you think? Then I'll leave it to you. Thank you, Xiaoya. My mother held Xiaofingya's hand tightly and nodded. The parents chatted in the room for a while, then left. I was the only one left in the room. It was past visiting hours, so no one would come to disturb me. Recently I felt very tired. Not only was my body tired, but my heart was even more tired. My parents kept their promise and didn't tell Xiaofingya that I was pregnant. I gently touched my belly. I still couldn't believe that there was a baby inside. However, I was still very happy. At least it gave my scarred heart some comfort. I gradually felt sleepy. I closed my eyes and prepared to have a good sleep. Just then, the door of the ward seemed to be pushed open. I instantly opened my eyes and saw a figure standing motionlessly at the door. I forced myself to stand up. Looking at the door, I shouted, "Who is it?" The figure suddenly moved and walked towards me. I switched on the bedside lamp. When he walked closer, I saw that it was Duanmu Quebec. I saw that he was hugging his blanket tightly and staring at him without moving. Duanmu K was holding a bouquet of flowers in his hand. He put the flowers on the bedside table and pulled out a chair to sit down on the bedside chair. He sat there motionlessly and looked at me. I glanced at him and didn't dare to look at him. I lay down with my back facing Duanmu Quebec. I clutched my belly, but I didn't dare to close my eyes. I was afraid that he would do something to me. "I'm sorry." After a long time, Duanmu K said those 3 words. It seemed that he was talking about the argument he had with me and caused me to fall down the stairs. I didn't look at him and said softly, "It's okay." The atmosphere became tense again. After a while, I suddenly felt something touch my body. I turned around and saw Duanmu K lying on the edge of the bed, holding his head. He looked like he was in pain. I was about to reach out to touch him, but I stopped. After struggling for a long time, I put my hand on his head and said softly, "Are you okay?" Duanmu K shook his head. "I'm fine. It's just that every time I feel like I don't hate you that much, my head hurts really bad. I just need to rest for a while." I sighed. "Why don't you go home and rest? It's getting late." Chapter 99. Duanmu K raised his head and looked at me in astonishment. "You know what I'm here for?" I was stunned for a moment, then shook my head. "I don't know." His eyes suddenly became very gentle. And for a moment, I felt that he had returned to his old self. When he saw my expression change, he immediately became very serious. He stood up with his back to me. "I'm here to see how you're doing. It's best if you don't fall too badly. I don't want to pay for your medical bills." The cold water Duanmu K poured on me instantly woke me up. I looked at his back and sneered, "Don't worry. I don't need you to pay for anything." Duanmu K paused for a moment. "That's good." Then, he pushed open the door of the ward and walked out. I was left alone in the ward. The quiet atmosphere made my warm heart turn cold again. I couldn't care less. He was no longer the person he used to be. Just let him be. And so, I stayed in the hospital for 2 more days. According to the doctor's instructions, I was discharged. On the day I was discharged, my parents, Xiaofingya and Xingyao, all came to pick me up. My parents helped me pack my luggage, and Xiaofingya helped me with the discharge procedures. Xingyao held my hand and looked at me with a worried expression. "Sister-in-law, are you okay?" After Dad and I were discharged, Mom told me about it. I was so angry. How could my brother be like that? "Sister-in-law, are you okay now?" Xingyao held my arm and looked at me carefully. I held her hand and said, "Girl, I'm fine now. I'm much better. Don't worry. The main thing is, I have something I need to trouble you with." Xingyao looked at me suspiciously. "Sister-in-law, if there's anything you need, just tell me. There's no need to be polite. What do you need me to do? As long as I can do it, I'll do my best." I looked at her with a smile and said, "It's like this. After I go back, it won't be convenient for me to share a room with Xiao Quebec. However, I'm not used to living in the guest room at home. I want to stay in your room for a dozen or so days. When Duanmu K and I agree to divorce, I'll leave. What do you think?" Xingyao was stunned for a moment. Then she looked at me and said, "Sister-in-law, that's not a problem. I still want to live with sister-in-law, but I still can't accept the fact that you and my brother are divorced. When I go back, I must have a good talk with my brother. I must educate him." At this moment, my mother walked up to us. She looked at Xingyao and said, "Xingyao, thank you for caring so much about our family's Shaoli. You don't have to talk to Duanmu K anymore. Our family has already accepted this fact. So for the next 10 days, please take care of our family's Shaoli." Xingyao looked at my mother and said, "Auntie, don't worry. I will take good care of my sister-in-law. My brother won't bully her anymore." "That's good. We're almost done. Let's go." My mother looked around the room to make sure she didn't leave anything behind. Then she pulled me out of the room. After we left the hospital, my parents didn't follow me back to Duanmu's house. I got into Xiaofengyao's car and drove with them to Duanmu's house. On the way home, Xinyao told me about Duanmu Tachio's situation. Because of the timely treatment, Duanmu Tachio's body didn't have any major problems. He had already returned home a day earlier than me. While we were talking, we arrived at Duanmu's house. When the car drove into the courtyard, Duanmu K, Yu Xian, and Suri were waiting at the door to welcome us. After we got out of the car, they walked over to greet us. I walked past Duanmu K and looked at him, but we didn't say anything. I walked straight into the living room. Duanmu Tachio was sitting on the sofa in the living room. When he saw us enter, he stood up and looked at me. "You're back. How are you feeling?" I smiled at Duanmu Tachio and said, "Dad, I'm fine. I'm much better now. I've made you worry. How are you?" "I'm fine. It's all thanks to this kid, Suri. He took me to the hospital in time and let me receive timely treatment." "Did you bring this kid here?" Duanmu Tachio asked me. At this time, Xinyao walked in front of me and looked at Duanmu Tachio. "Dad, Suri is sister-in-law's personal bodyguard. She brought him here. But when you were in trouble, she didn't have time to tell you." Duanmu Tachio nodded. "Oh, so that's how it is. Suri is a good kid. I don't have to worry about him following Xiaoli. In the future, let him follow Xiaoli. Also, tell the housekeeper to arrange a guest room for him." Suri quickly walked to the front and looked at Duanmu Tachio. "Thank you, President Duanmu." "Thank you." Duanmu Tachio smiled at Suri. Then, he looked at me and said, "Xiaoli, your father already called me. Since your elder brother has agreed, I'm willing to respect his decision. This time when I wasn't at home, something like this happened. It was an accident. But for Xiaoli's safety, I've decided to let Xiaoli stay in the guest room." Xinyao looked at me, then looked at Duanmu Lixiong and said, "Father, don't let sister-in-law stay in the guest room. It's been a long time since I was able to endure the guest room. It's cold and cheerless. It's better to let sister-in-law stay with me. This way, it'll be more convenient for us to talk, okay?" Duanmu Tachio looked at me and nodded. Then he said to Xinyao, "That's good too. I can rest assured." "Wait." At that moment, Duanmu K walked in front of me from behind. He looked at my face and said, "Dad, let her stay in the bedroom." I was stunned and looked at Duanmu Quebec. I couldn't guess what he meant. Was he going to continue torturing me? Duanmu Tachio looked at Duanmu K and said, "K, you've already hurt Xiaoli so much. Why do you want her to go back? To continue being tortured by you?" Duanmu K turned to Duanmu Tachio and said, "Dad, I already know. I won't do it again. Also, I can vaguely remember a few things recently. She's in every one of them. I want to ask her something." As soon as Duanmu K finished speaking, Yu Xian stuck to his side and looked at him. "Duanmu Gij, don't think about it. Did you forget? Once you think about it, your head hurts." Duanmu K shook his head. "It really hurts. But recently, the images have become clearer and clearer. I can also see that the person is cold glaze. I keep feeling like I'm forgetting something. I remember now." Duanmu Tachio and Xiaofengya looked at each other. Then, they looked at Duanmu K and said, "I don't think it's safe. After all, your temper is very bad right now." Duanmu K looked at Duanmu Tachio and said, "Dad, I hope you can believe me. If I say I won't hurt her again, I definitely won't." Chapter 100. Duanmu Tachio looked at me. "Xiaoli, what do you think?" I glanced at Duanmu Quebec. He was also looking at me. I thought for a while, then looked at Duanmu Tachio. "Dad, I'll go back." "Sister-in-law." Xinyao pulled my arm. She looked at me and shook her head. "Sister-in-law, don't go back. I promised Auntie that I would take good care of you." I held her hand. "Don't worry. I'll be fine. If anything happens, I'll call you, okay?" Xinyao pursed her lips. She walked in front of Duanmu Quebec. She pouted and looked at Duanmu Quebec. "Gij, if you bully my sister-in-law again, I'll really get angry. Last time, when I wasn't home, you caused my sister-in-law to fall down the stairs. I haven't settled that account with you yet." Duanmu K looked at Xinyao and didn't say anything. Yu Xian wasn't happy. She looked at Xinyao and said, Xingyao, I think you misunderstood. Your sister-in-law was careless and fell down the stairs. Your Gij didn't push her. Before Yu Exan could finish, Xingyao glared at her and said, Since when is it your turn to speak? Can't you see that our family is talking? I pulled Xingyao's arm, indicating that she shouldn't talk too much. I looked at Duan Mutachio and said, Dad, it's decided. I'll go back to our bedroom. If anything happens, I'll tell you. Duan Mutachio nodded. All right. Let's do it. I turned to Xiao Fingya and said, Mom, I ate breakfast at the hospital. I won't eat lunch. Let's talk about dinner. I'm too weak. I want to rest. Xiao Fingya said, Okay, call me if you're hungry. I'll have the nanny bring you food. I smiled and said, Thank you, Mom. Dad, Mom, I'm going upstairs. Then I carried the luggage I brought back from the hospital and went upstairs to my bedroom. After returning to the bedroom, I closed the door and let out a deep sigh. What happened a few days ago was still vivid in my mind. Although I couldn't see the mess on the floor, the pain still made me feel a lingering fear. I threw my luggage on the floor next to the wardrobe and opened the wardrobe. I took out a quilt and put it on the bed. Then, I moved the quilt that was originally on the bed to the side where Duanmuke usually slept. I took off my shoes and lay under the quilt. Although I had returned, my heart was still empty. As I lay on the bed and let my imagination run wild, the bedroom door was suddenly pushed open. Duanmuke walked in and closed the door. He stood at the door and looked at me. I sat up and leaned against the headboard. I stared at him blankly. Duanmuke walked in front of me and sat down next to me. He looked at me and asked, Are you still not feeling well? I was stunned and shook my head. Then I looked at him and said, I'm fine. I'll be fine after some rest. Actually, Duanmuke paused. He continued, Actually, I went to the hospital that day to apologize to you. Apologize? I stared at Duanmuke blankly. The atmosphere became a little awkward. Mother So coughed and said, Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. You should have a good rest. I looked at him and nodded. The two of us sat there awkwardly for a while. Duanmuke kept looking at me. His eyes never left mine. I felt that the atmosphere was too awkward. I looked at Duanmuke and said, Didn't you have some questions to ask me? Yes, I have a lot of questions to ask you, but I can't remember them. Duanmuke scratched his head and shook it hard. I thought for a while and looked at Duanmu Quebec. You can ask me when you remember them. Anyway, there are only 10 days left. Okay. Duanmuke's sudden gentleness made me feel uncomfortable. I thought for a while and stood up from the bed. I put on my shoes and walked towards the door. Duanmuke suddenly asked, What are you going to do? I didn't look at him. With my back to him, I said, I'm going to take a look at the garden and talk to Suri. Duanmuke stood up and looked at me. You'd better keep your distance from Suri. Besides, he's not a threat to me. Think whatever you want. He's my personal bodyguard. He only listens to me. Then, I pushed the door open and left the bedroom. Perhaps I was just imagining things, but Duanmuke's words clearly carried a hint of jealousy. Could it be that he had already regained consciousness? Or did he not forget me at all? Was he pretending not to know me? No matter how I looked at it, it didn't seem like it. Unknowingly, I walked to the rose pond in the garden. The flowers in the garden were still blooming brightly. It seemed that the flowers had been taken good care of while I was gone. Suri was already standing under the big tree next to the rose pond. Suri saw me and walked towards me. He said, Miss Lung, why did you call me here? I sat on the rattan chair, next to the rose pond, and looked at Suri. Thank you for taking care of Duanmutachio for me. Ha ha ha, you're too polite. As long as it's something you want me to do, I'll definitely do it. Suri smiled. I lowered my head and looked at Suri. I've already agreed to the divorce. In 10 days, we'll go through the divorce procedures. Suri squatted next to me and looked at me. What? You agreed? But don't you love him? Why did you give up so easily? I rolled up my sleeves and showed Suri the bruises that hadn't disappeared 2 days ago. Suri was shocked when he saw them. He looked at me in disbelief. Did he do this? Did he also push you down the stairs? I'm going to find him now. After saying that, Suri wanted to get up, but I stopped him. I shook my head and looked at Suri. Forget it. Don't go. I've already decided to divorce. There's no point in finding trouble with him. Then what are you going to do? Suri asked me. I gently touched my belly and said meaningfully, let's just live peacefully like this. Just think of it as doing it for the baby. Suri looked at me in shock. What? You're pregnant? I signaled Suri to lower his voice. Lower your voice. I didn't tell Duanmu's family about this. I only told you because you're a close friend. I hope you can keep this a secret for me. Surui nodded and said to me, that's a must. Whatever you want to do, I'll listen to you and do it according to your wishes. I smiled and looked at Suri. Thank you. You're really trustworthy. I really didn't see you. Of course. Suri made a face at me. Chapter 101. You two seem to be having a good conversation. Just then, a man's voice sounded from behind the tree. Before I could react, Suri quickly rushed in front of me, shielding me behind him. He shouted in the direction of the voice. Who is it? A figure walked out from behind the tree. It was none other than Han Hao. Han Hao stood in front of me and Suri. He looked at us and said, Shaoli, can I speak with you alone? I hesitated and lowered my head. Suri turned to look at me and said, Miss Lung, do you want to speak with him? I looked up at Suri and said, you go do your work. Don't worry, he's not a bad person. Suri nodded and said, okay, then I'll go do my work. Call me if you need anything. With that, Suri left, leaving only me and Han Hao. I turned around and sat on the rattan chair across from the rose pond. I looked at Han Hao and said, what do you want? Han Hao walked in front of me and suddenly squatted down. He took my hand, pulled up my sleeve, and gently stroked my wound. He lifted his head and looked at me with a pained expression. Does it hurt? I shook my head and looked at him. It doesn't hurt. It's almost healed. It's fine. Han Hao took my hand and looked at me. He reached out and touched my face. Shaoli, can you give me some time to talk to you? If you want to confess to me, then don't. I won't agree. Han Hao suddenly raised his head and kissed me directly on the lips. I didn't have time to react. I stared at him with wide eyes. I reached out and pushed Han Hao's shoulder, but he held me in his arms. He held me so tightly that I couldn't struggle. I quietly felt Han Hao's warm lips warming my cold heart. After a while, Han Hao reached out and held me in his arms. He leaned his head on my shoulder and stroked my hair. Shaoli, be with me. I sighed. I'm sorry, Han Hao. I really can't promise you. Not before, not now, and not in the future. Han Hao looked at me. Why? Do you dare say that you don't have me in your heart? I looked hesitant. I didn't know what to say. I avoided Han Hao's gaze. He touched my face and said, Shaoli, look at me. I turned to look into Han Hao's eyes. His gaze was sincere. He looked at me and said, I won't force you to do anything that you don't want to do. I just hope that you can give me a chance to take care of you. Even if I can only quietly accompany you, I'll be satisfied. I sighed and looked at Han Hao. I really can't promise you. Whether it's you, Xiaokei, Xinyao, or me, I can't promise you anything. I can't let our relationship become a stalemate. That's definitely not the problem. Is there something that you can't tell me? Can you tell me? I'll share it with you. I was very conflicted. I couldn't tell him that I was pregnant. I kept my mouth shut, not knowing how to open it. It was at this moment that a voice rang out from the depths of the garden, connected to the house. Big brother Han Hao. Han Hao stood up and looked in that direction. Someone walked out from the depths of the garden. It was none other than Xinyao. Xinyao stood there and looked at us. Her face was full of tears. She looked at me and said softly, Sister-in-law. I stood up and looked at Xinyao. I felt very awkward. Xinyao didn't move. She just stood there, tears flowing from the corners of her eyes. Han Hao and I stood in front of her, not knowing what to say. Xinyao wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. She forced a smile and looked at us. Brother Han Hao, sister-in-law, I'm sorry. I just got here. I didn't mean to eavesdrop on your conversation. I looked at Xinyao and my heart ached. It seemed that what I didn't want to happen had happened. Han Hao suddenly said to Xinyao, Xinyao, I think it's time to tell you. I think you know that the one I like is Shaoli. I know you like me. I tried to like you, but I couldn't. Xiaoli has been in my heart for a long time. I'm sorry. Han Hao's eyes were full of guilt. Xingyao lowered her head. I was very worried and walked towards her. I raised my hand and wanted to touch her hair. I could feel her twitching, and my heart was also very uncomfortable. Suddenly, Xingyao opened her mouth and said, I know that you like sister-in-law. I also know that I can't replace sister-in-law's position in your heart. Every time I see you and sister-in-law together, you smile very happily. But when you're with me, if you're not reading a book, you're playing with your phone. And your face is also expressionless. Although I know the truth, my heart still feels very uncomfortable. I gently stroked Xinyao's hair. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know what to say. Han Hao walked over to us. He looked at Xingyao and said, Xingyao, I know how you feel about me. Before Xiaoli got married, I did have feelings for her. But after she got married to Duanmuke, I hid my feelings for her. A while ago, when I found out that she and Xiao Ke were going to get divorced, my feelings for her became stronger and stronger. That's why I confessed to her. It's because I want to take care of her. She needs someone to take care of her the most right now. I turned around and looked at Han Hao. I signaled him not to agitate Xingyao anymore. Xingyao suddenly raised her head and hugged me. She leaned on my shoulder and cried loudly. I hugged her tightly. I didn't expect that the person who didn't want to hurt her the most would become the one who hurt her the most. My heart was filled with guilt. I could only quietly accompany her and give her a little bit of comfort. Just like that, I stood there with Xingyao in my arms for a while. Han Hao quietly stayed by my side and didn't say anything. After a while, Xingyao raised her head. I helped her wipe the tears on her face. Xingyao looked at me. Her eyes were still as gentle as ever. She looked at me and said, sister-in-law, no matter what, I like you. I want to be with you. Although I like Gij Han Hao likes you very much. Since my brother doesn't cherish you, I also hope that you can seriously consider Gij Han Hao. I believe that he will love you very much, just like how I love you. Hearing Xinyao's words, I felt even more uncomfortable. I stroked Xinyao's hair and said, silly girl, don't think too much. I don't have the mood to think about feelings for the time being. Hearing me say that, Han Hao raised his head and looked at me. His eyes flashed with disappointment, but he didn't say anything. Xingyao held my face. After she calmed down, she looked at me and said, sister-in-law, can you promise me something? No matter what it is, can you promise me first? Chapter 102. I sighed and looked at Xianyao. If you want me to be with Han Hao, I won't agree. Xianyao looked at me. Sister-in-law, you have to promise me that you will take good care of yourself. No matter what happens, no matter who you meet, you have to take good care of yourself. No matter who is by your side in the future, you can't let yourself be wronged. Because if I see you being wronged, my heart will hurt too. I touched Xianyao's crying face and said, okay, I promise you. Don't worry. I will take good care of myself. I turned and looked at Han Hao. Han Hao, talk to Xianyao. It's getting late. I'm going back. Then, I turned and walked past Han Hao, heading to the living room. On the way back, my mood was very complicated. It wasn't that I didn't have Han Hao in my heart. It was just that I was pregnant and couldn't accept Han Hao. I didn't want my child and me to be a burden to him. As I spoke, I walked up the stairs and arrived at the bedroom door. Suddenly, I wondered if Duanmuke was still in the bedroom. Whatever, I would have to face it sooner or later. I pushed open the bedroom door and entered the room. Duanmuke was lying on the bed, his face pale, and his forehead covered in sweat. I hurried to his side and wiped the sweat off his face. It was cold. Duanmuke's brows were tightly furrowed. He looked really uncomfortable. As I wiped the tears off his face, I softly called out his name. Xiao Ke, wake up. What's wrong? Are you not feeling well? Xiao Ke, can you hear me? Duanmuke didn't respond. His eyes were tightly shut, and he still looked like he was in pain. I was a little worried. Just as I was about to turn and call the housekeeper, Duanmuke reached out and grabbed my arm. I turned around and saw that his eyes were still tightly shut. He kept calling, wifey. Wifey. I sat next to him and held his hand tightly. Looking at him now, I was very worried. How could this happen? I held his hand and wiped the sweat off his forehead again and again. Gradually, his expression became less painful. I heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that he was fine. However, he was still holding my hand tightly. I didn't want to let go. I was afraid that I would wake him up. It wasn't easy for him to fall asleep. If I were to wake him up again, he might feel uncomfortable. Just like that, I didn't know how much time had passed. I held Duanmukei's hand and lay next to him. Unknowingly, I fell asleep. This was the most peaceful sleep I'd had in the past few days. It was as if I had returned to the time when Duanmukei and I were still loving each other. It was as if I could see that gentle and handsome face that had stayed by my side and never left. When I woke up again, it was already evening. There was no light in the room, so it was dark. I opened my eyes and saw a handsome face in front of me. He was staring at me with his eyes wide open. I was so shocked that I sat up. My face was red, and I didn't know what to do. After thinking for a while, I crawled out of his arms and sat in front of the dressing table. I fiddled with the things on the table, but I didn't say anything. I glanced at the time. It was already past dinner time. I looked at Duanmukei through the mirror. He was leaning against the headboard and looking at me expressionlessly. I blushed again. With my back to him, I said, "You must be hungry. Do you want to eat something? I'll go downstairs and make it." Duanmukei still didn't say anything. He just sat there and looked at me expressionlessly. I sighed. "Forget it. I'll go make something and bring it to you." I stood up and walked to the door. "Wait a minute." Duanmukei called out to me. I turned around and looked at him. He looked at me and said, "I want to eat something hot." I looked at him and smiled. Then, I turned and walked out of the bedroom. I went to the kitchen and cooked 2 bowls of vegetable porridge. I added some side dishes and brought them to the bedroom. After entering the bedroom, I brought the porridge to Duanmukei and handed him the bowl. He wolfed it down. I sat on the edge of the bed and drank the porridge while looking at him from time to time. I had only taken a few mouthfuls, but he had already finished the entire bowl. Then, he looked at my bowl with eager eyes. I immediately understood what he meant. I handed my bowl to him and said, "You can eat it." Duanmukei hesitated for a moment, but still took the bowl. In a few mouthfuls, he finished the 2 bowls of porridge. I took the empty bowl and brought it to the kitchen. After I cleaned up, I cut some fruit and brought it to the bedroom. Duanmukei sat at the head of the bed and ate the fruit while looking at me. His eyes had become very strange. They weren't gentle like before, nor were they cruel like before. It was as if he was savoring me, which made me feel very uncomfortable. I reached out and touched his forehead. His temperature was normal, and he wasn't sweating anymore. It seemed that he was fine. I suddenly remembered that he was sweating, so I touched the bedsheet. It was damp. I sighed and took out a set of Duanmukei's clothes from the wardrobe. I also took out a bedsheet, a quilt cover, and 2 pillowcases. I handed the clothes to Duanmukei. Looking at him, I said, "Go take a shower. When you're done, just throw the clothes into the washing machine." Then, I pulled the quilt aside and began to take off the quilt cover. Duanmukei hugged the clothes and looked at me. He didn't move. I looked at him and said, "Go quickly. Do you want to use the bathtub? If you do, I'll go fill the tub." I put down the quilt cover and walked to the bathroom. Suddenly, Duanmukei stopped me. He said, "Why are you so good to me?" I stopped in my tracks. Hearing him say that, my heart ached. Yes, why am I so good to him? A man who once loved me and hurt me. Why am I so good to him? I sighed and said, "It's nothing. It's just a small matter." I walked to the bathroom, turned on the tap, and began to fill the tub. I sat by the tub and watched the water flow. My complicated heart gradually calmed down. Duanmukei stood at the bathroom door and looked at me. He was naked, and he put his new clothes on the sink. He took off his dirty clothes and threw them into the washing machine. I raised my head and glanced at him. Then, I stared at the tap, waiting for it to finish. "I'll do it. You go and rest." Duanmukei's tone became very gentle. It suddenly made me feel uncomfortable. I looked at him and thought, if he wants to do it himself, then let him do it himself. I stood up and looked at him. You're sweating so much. Don't soak for too long. Call me if you need anything. I walked past him. He suddenly pulled me and said, Don't go. If you're not busy, come and help me wipe my back. Chapter 103. I turned around and looked at Duanmu Quebec. I didn't understand what he was thinking. Duanmu K seemed to see my confusion. He looked at me and said, If you think it's too much, then forget it. I was stunned. I looked at him and said, It's not too much. You wash up first. I'm going to change into something more comfortable. I looked at him and walked out of the bathroom. I stood at the bathroom door and heard the sound of running water. It seemed that Duanmu K had already started showering. I sighed and walked to the wardrobe. I opened it and took out one of Duanmu K's jerseys. I changed into it. It was his fault for tearing my clothes to shreds. I had no choice but to wear his jerseys. After changing my clothes, I went to the bathroom door. I knocked on the door and Duanmu K said from inside, Come in. I pushed the door open and walked in. He was lying in the bathtub with only his head sticking out. I glanced at him and didn't say anything. I took a wet towel and wrapped it around my hand. I looked at Duanmu K and asked, Are you done? Can I start now? Duan Myuk opened his eyes and nodded at me. Then he turned his back to me and said, That's enough. I reached for a small wooden stool and placed it behind him. I sat in front of his back and used the wet towel to gently wipe his back. I asked softly, How's the temperature? Moderate or slightly cool or hot? Duanmu K turned his head and looked at me. Not bad. You can use more strength. Oh. I agreed and gently wiped his back. Looking at Duanmu K's back, I felt that this figure was very familiar. It didn't seem like a stranger anymore. It was as if the person I used to know had returned. For a moment, I was stunned and stopped what I was doing. Duanmu K turned his head and looked at me. He asked in confusion, What's wrong? Why did you stop? His words brought me back to reality from my reverie. I returned to my senses and continued to brush against his back. Not much, I whispered. Duanmu K thought for a while and said to me, Dad, Mom and Xinyao told me about our marriage. Although I didn't admit it at first, I've gradually gotten used to it. There were several times when I was half asleep and half awake. I could always feel your figure appear in my mind. I've asked them, but they couldn't tell me what we did when we were together. When I think about it, my head hurts. There were several times when I deliberately forced myself to try hard to remember, but I couldn't remember. Hearing Duanmu K's words, my heart was a little excited. It seemed that he still had an impression of me in his mind, but thinking that he had decided to divorce me, my heart was very sad. I said softly, Don't think about it. Since you've decided to give up, what's the point of thinking about it again? It's useless. So, when I was with you, I had a lot of good memories. Duanmu K turned to look at me, his eyes sparkling with expectation. I raised my head and looked at him. I pulled his arm and rubbed it gently. It's all in the past. Why are you still talking about it? Don't talk about it now. And don't talk about it in the future. It's meaningless. Duanmu K tilted his head and looked at me. That's not right. Didn't you want me to recover my memory the most? Once I regain my memory, I might withdraw my divorce request and treat you as well as you described. Isn't that what you want? She looked at Tang Meng and said. I sneered and looked at Duanmu Quebec. That's right. That's what I want. But how can you guarantee that you'll recover your memory? Even if you do recover your memory, what can you do when we're divorced? What's the point of recovering your memory when you're married to someone else? Duanmu K thought for a while. He looked at me and said, You're right. I'm an irresponsible person. Hearing Duanmu K say that, I silently told him in my heart that he wasn't an irresponsible person. It was the exact opposite. He would always put other people's benefits first. He would always think about other people, and he rarely cared about himself. I finished wiping both of Duanmu K's arms. I took off the towel, washed it, and handed it to Duanmu Quebec. I said to him, I'm done wiping. You can wipe the rest yourself. Duanmu K didn't take the towel. He looked at me and said, Since you've already wiped my back and arms, you don't need to do the rest. Wipe them all. I smiled and looked at Duamu Quebec. You don't need me to do that. You can do it yourself. Besides, I have a lot of other things to do. He glanced at me. I thought he would let go of my hand and let me go, but he let go of my hand. He scooped up a handful of water from the bathtub and splashed it on my clothes. The clothes I had just changed into were drenched again. I stood in front of Duanmu K with a red face and looked at him. I said angrily to him, Duanmu K, what do you want? Duanmu K pointed at me and said, my clothes are wet. I guess my body is wet too. You should wash too. Duanmu K's divine theory had convinced me. I didn't know how to answer. I stood there like a drowned rat. Seeing that I didn't move, Duanmu K stood up from the bathtub. He didn't wear anything and stood naked in front of me. I didn't like the scene, but I couldn't just cover my eyes. I turned my head and didn't look at him. I blushed and said to Duanmu K, you should hurry up and wash up. Duanmu K stood in front of me and didn't say anything. At this moment, his hand grabbed the front of my basketball uniform and pulled it up. He was going to take off my clothes. I was so scared that I quickly moved back and pulled at my clothes with all my strength. I looked at him with a terrified expression and said, what are you doing? Duanmu K walked in front of me and looked at me. You're wet. If you don't take it off, you'll catch a cold. You've just recovered. I don't want you to go back to the hospital right after you came back. I refused in my heart. I hugged my chest and hid in the corner of the door. I looked at Duanmu K and shook my head. There's really no need. There's really no need. However, Duanmu K didn't want to let me go. He walked in front of me and took off his clothes. Then he reached for my pants. I was afraid that he would be impulsive and hurt the baby in my stomach. I quickly grabbed his hand and said, I'll do it myself. I'll do it myself. Then, under Duanmu K's watch, I obediently took off all my clothes and stood naked in front of Duanmu Quebec. It was true. Logically speaking, we were an old married couple who had lived together for a while. This shouldn't be a big deal. However, I was still a little embarrassed to be naked like this. Chapter 104. Duanmu K looked at me standing naked in the corner. He nodded in satisfaction. He pulled me to the front of the bathtub and draped a towel over me. He drained all the water he'd soaked in and brushed the corners of the bathtub. Then he filled the bathtub with water. He stood up and looked at me. Get in. I didn't understand Duanmu K's actions. I looked at him in confusion. What is the meaning of this? Duanmu K paused and looked at me. I wasn't feeling well in the afternoon. I was sweating all over. You were by my side the whole time, right? I'm guessing you're covered in my sweat. You should wash up. I understood Duanmu K's meaning. I shook my head and looked at Duanmu K saying, no need, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'll go out first. With that, I retreated towards the door. Duanmu K suddenly crouched down and picked me up horizontally. He took off his slippers and stepped into the bathtub. Then he placed me in the bathtub. Since the bathtub was small, I didn't have time to react. Duanmu K placed me in front of him. With my back facing him, I could feel his strong heartbeat. Neither of us spoke. At that moment, it felt as if the space around us had frozen. Duanmu K wet the towel and gently wiped my back. A few days ago, when I was fighting with Duanmu K and fell down the stairs, the injuries were still very obvious. I could feel Duanmu K's fingertips gently grazing the scars on my back. It was just a simple physical touch, but I could vaguely feel his sadness. But I couldn't accept this kind of warmth. The him now and the him a few days ago were two completely different people. I didn't know which was the real him. I didn't move. I sat in Duanmu K's arms and let him stroke my back. He stroked the bruises that he'd caused. Because my shoulders weren't soaked in the water, I felt a little cold. I lowered my head and hugged my shoulders. Just then, Duanmu K hugged me from behind. In an instant, my entire body warmed up. My face grew redder and redder. I wanted him to let me go, but I didn't know what to say. Just as I was hesitating, Duanmu K suddenly opened his mouth and said, I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. I knew that he was apologizing to me for falling down the stairs with him 2 days ago. I was indeed heartbroken towards him. But what was this tenderness of his? I didn't know either. I could only comfort myself again and again. telling myself that the Dwanmuke now wasn't the same as before. It was impossible for him to love and care for me. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but sigh. My sigh stunned Dwanmuke. He was still hugging me. What's wrong? Are you not feeling well? I moved Dwanmuke's hand away. I turned around and sat across from Dwanmuke looking at that familiar yet strange face. I said, I think the two of us need to talk. Okay, go ahead. Dwanmuke looked at me, his expression becoming a little serious. I sorted out my emotions. I looked at Dwanmuke and said, Tell me, why are you suddenly so nice to me? Didn't you annoy me to the point that you wanted to kill me? Why are you so passionate now? Dwanmuke sighed. He looked at me and said, I have indeed forgotten everything that happened between us. But when I think of you, my heart doesn't feel pain but happiness. I'm becoming more and more interested in you. I admit that I did hate you. I did do a lot of things to hurt you. I won't deny that. It's too late. It's already too late. There are only 12 days until our divorce date. I don't have many requests. I just hope that you can let me spend these 12 days in peace. I'll be satisfied. I don't want to have anything to do with you. As for whether you want to remember it or not, it doesn't have much to do with me, because I don't have you in my heart anymore. It took a lot of courage for me to say these words, but as soon as I said them, my heart broke painfully. I stood up from the bathtub and calmed myself down. Looking at Dwanmuke, I said, I'll go out first. With that, I stepped out of the bathtub and walked towards the door. You're not a woman who can lie. Dwanmuke said from behind me, Your tears betrayed you. You say you have no feelings for me, but in your heart, you can't bear to part with me. It seems that you have feelings for me. I stopped and turned to look at Dwanmuke. You're wrong. I have feelings for the old Dwanmuke, not for a cold-blooded monster like you. Dwanmuke smiled coldly. He looked at me and said, Since you said that, it seems that I should keep you by my side so that I can slowly torture you. How about this? Since I can divorce you, I can also choose not to. The right is in my hands. I believe that you can do that, but you can't restrict my freedom. Since I agreed to divorce you, I can also choose not to continue being with you. You don't have to threaten me. Since it's come to this, I have nothing to be afraid of. All right, I'm going to sleep. Then I walked out of the bathroom. The moment I closed the door, my heart started to beat faster and faster. It felt like it was going to jump out of my chest. I didn't know if my words had angered him. I hoped not. Right now, nothing was more important than the child in my belly. As long as he didn't hurt my child, or rather our child, it would be fine. Although he didn't know, I didn't know how to face Dwanmuke and the entire Dwanmu family. I calmed down and walked to the side of the bed. I lay down on the side of the bed where I had laid the quilt. As I crawled under the quilt, a wave of sleepiness hit me. I prepared to go to sleep early. After all, my body was still very weak. Just as I was half awake, I vaguely felt Dwanmuke walk out of the bathroom and lie down on the bed. I didn't say anything, and just moved to the side of the bed. I was afraid that if I squeezed him, he would find a chance to fly into a rage. I could feel Dwanmuke tossing and turning for a while. Then he stopped moving. I guessed that he had gone to sleep. Before I could finish my thoughts, Dwanmuke's arm pressed against my body. His hand happened to cover my breasts. I blushed and reached out to pat his hand. Take it away, I whispered. Dwanmuke didn't speak, nor did he take his hand away. I was a little angry. I turned to look at him and said angrily, What do you want to do? Without waiting for me to finish, Dwanmuke's lips had already deeply kissed mine. Chapter 105. I stared at Dwanmuke with my eyes wide open. He closed his eyes and kissed me deeply on the lips. I didn't push him away. I didn't know why I didn't reject him. Maybe my hatred for him couldn't overcome the feelings I had for him deep in my heart. After a while, Dwanmuke opened his eyes. He looked at me in surprise, then immediately pushed me away and turned his back to me. I was stunned by his actions. I reached out to touch his arm, but I stopped. I turned around and leaned against the side of the bed. My head kept replaying the scene that had just happened, and I didn't feel good about it. After a while, Dwanmuke asked me softly, Are you asleep? No. I didn't do it on purpose. I don't know why I did it. My body couldn't help but get close to you. I'm sorry, Duanmuke explained calmly. Indeed, I had expected this answer. I sighed and said softly, it's fine. Although I said it was fine, my heart was bleeding. It's fine. Go to sleep. Hearing Duanmuke say that, I didn't say anything. I had been with him for a long time, and I understood his temper and personality. However, my feelings for him had never disappeared. Just like that, the two of us slept with our backs against each other. When I woke up the next day, he was no longer in bed. Looking at the empty room, my heart was filled with sorrow. In about 10 days, this place would no longer belong to me. Even if I didn't want to leave, what use would it be? There was nothing left for me to stay here. After I simply freshened up, I walked out of the bedroom. Coincidentally, I met Xinyao, who was about to go eat breakfast. We looked at each other, and I could feel that Xinyao was stunned for a moment. Then she became very embarrassed. After that, she had a very difficult expression. I guess that Han Hao had already told her about it yesterday, but she just couldn't accept it. I took a step forward and walked in front of Xinyao. Holding her arm, I smiled and said to her, "Good morning, girl." Xinyao saw that I took the initiative to greet her. She smiled and said, "Good morning, sister-in-law." Seeing Xinyao's smile, my heart felt a lot better. I looked at Xinyao and touched her face. "How did you sleep last night? Your eyes are a bit red and swollen, and there are dark circles under your eyes. Did you not rest well?" "Ah, it can't be." Xinyao quickly ran to her bedroom and took out a small mirror. Then, she looked at herself in the mirror and looked up and down. She looked at me with an aggrieved expression and said, "Oh my God, it was really swollen. I really have dark circles." I shook my head helplessly and patted her shoulder. "Don't worry, I have an eye cream in my room. It's pretty good. After breakfast, come to my room and I'll give it to you." "Wow, this is great. Thank you, sister-in-law." Xinyao hugged me and acted like a spoiled child. I gently stroked her hair and thought about yesterday's events. I said to her softly, "Girl, Han Hao didn't say anything to hurt you yesterday, right?" Xinyao looked at me. At first she was stunned. Then she sighed and said, "He didn't say anything. Han Hao Gij, and I have already talked about it." Xinyao moved closer to my ear and whispered, "No matter what, if Gij really wants a divorce, I really hope that you and Han Hao Gij can be together. No matter what, you are my sister-in-law." I shook my head and looked at Xinyao. "I won't choose him." Xinyao grabbed my hand and said to me calmly, "Sister-in-law, you have to believe me. I've already let it go. I also know that Han Hao Gij has feelings for you. Of course, I also know that you have Han Hao Gij in your heart. So, sister-in-law, I'm really doing this for your happiness." Before I could answer, I heard a voice behind me. "You're already looking for your next home?" I turned around and saw that it was Yu Xian. She crossed her arms and leaned against the wall, looking at us. Yu Xian sneered and looked at me. "It's no wonder. You lost favor with Duanmu Gij, so naturally you want to find someone else. It's not your fault, but you're destroying your best friend's happiness. It's not right." Before I could answer, Xinyao walked in front of me. She looked at Yu Xian and said fiercely, "Yu Xian, you don't need to drive a wedge between us. This is between me and my sister-in-law. No matter what, it's better than a bad woman like you who steals someone else's husband." Yu Xian sneered and looked at Xinyao. "You're really stupid. You just gave your beloved man to her. You don't think this is a coincidence, do you? Don't you think this was all planned by her?" Yu Xian pointed at me and asked Xinyao. Xinyao glared at Yu Xian. She calmed down and then said loudly to Yu Xian, "Compared to you, I believe in my sister-in-law more. No matter what. As long as my sister-in-law and Han Hao are together, I will wish them happiness. This matter has nothing to do with you. I'm in a good mood today, and don't want to fight with you. Please leave." Xinyao pointed at the stairs and signaled Yu Xian to leave. The three of us looked at each other like this. At this time, Duanmuke walked up the stairs. He looked at Yu Xian, then looked at me and Xinyao and said coldly, "Why aren't you guys going down to eat breakfast? Dad and Mom are already rushing you. Hurry up and go down." Xinyao glared at Yuxian, then pulled me and said, "Sister-in-law, let's go eat. Don't pay attention to her." Xinyao pulled me past Duanmu Quebec. Duanmu K's eyes never left me. As Xinyao and I walked down the stairs, we heard Duanmu K's voice behind us. Xin, do you have something going on today? If you don't, come with me to a place." Hearing Duanmu K's words, my heart was shocked. I turned my head and looked out of the corner of my eyes. Yuxian was snuggling up to Duanmu K's arm like a little girl. But Duanmu K's expression was still cold. Although I felt uncomfortable, I didn't show it. After Xinyao and I had a simple breakfast, she pulled me back to her bedroom. Since Duanmu K tore my clothes, I didn't have any clothes to wear. Xinyao helped me look through her wardrobe. As she picked out clothes, she told me a lot of things that happened between her and Han Hao when they were young. The two of us talked very happily. At this time there was a knock on the door. Xinyao called out to the door. "Who is it? Please come in." The housekeeper opened the door. She stood at the bedroom door and looked at me and Xinyao. She said, young mistress, young master Han Hao has arrived. He's downstairs in the living room. Young mistress' personal bodyguard Suri is also there. Young master Han Hao told me to come up and tell you." Chapter 106. I nodded and looked at the nanny. "Okay, I got it. You can leave now. Tell them we'll be right down." The nanny nodded, closed the door, and left. Xinyao took out some clothes from the wardrobe and looked at me. "Sister-in-law, let's go out for a picnic today. It'll be just the four of us. We won't bring my brother. I don't like him recently, so I don't want to see him." I looked at her with some hesitation. "I don't think that's a good idea. I said I won't leave this house before we get married. If we go out to play, that's fine." "What's that?" "If you don't leave this house, then you won't live apart. You can't even go out to play." "It's fine. If my brother doesn't agree, I'll tell him." Xinyao took out a set of exquisite casual clothes and looked at me. "Sister-in-law, why don't you wear this? It'll suit us when we go out to play today." I picked up the clothes and looked at them. "This is too pretty. You should keep it for yourself." Xinyao pushed the clothes to me and looked at me. No. I want you to wear it. You'll definitely look good in it." I smiled and looked at Xinyao. "Okay." I took Xinyao's clothes and changed into them. After Xinyao changed, we packed our bags and walked out of the bedroom. When we went downstairs, Han Hao and Suri were really sitting in the living room waiting for us. I didn't know what they were talking about, but they seemed to be very excited. When they saw me and Xinyao come down, they stood up. Han Hao looked at me and said, "How was it? Did you rest well yesterday?" I looked at Han Hao and said, "It's nothing. It was pretty good. You guys came early. Just now, the girl told me that the weather was pretty good today and wanted to go out for a picnic. How about it? Do you guys have time to do me the honor of going out together?" Han Hao smiled, then looked at us and said, "Since Miss Lung and Duanmu are interested, then of course I have to serve you to the end. Isn't that right, Suri?" Han Hao gave Suri a meaningful glance. Suri immediately understood what Han Hao meant. He looked at me and said, "Of course." Looking at Suri's fawning expression, we all laughed. Right at this moment, the sound of a chainsaw came from outside the door. I looked at the door and asked, "What's that noise?" Han Hao glanced at the door and then said to me, "I don't know." When I arrived, I saw several workers walking towards the park. Walking towards the park? I looked at Han Hao in confusion. "That's right. Look, it's over at the rose garden." Han Hao sat on the sofa and picked up a cup of coffee. "Oh no!" I shouted. I threw down my backpack and ran towards the rose garden. I hoped that what I was thinking hadn't happened. I ran to the rose garden pond. Several workers were using a chainsaw to sweep up the roses. Broken flowers were scattered all over the pond. It was a complete mess. What I didn't want to happen happened. I shouted at them, "Stop." The workers looked at me blankly and stopped what they were doing. I looked at them and shouted, "Who is it? Who told you to do this?" One of the workers looked at me and said, "The housekeeper arranged for us to come here. He told us to tear down the rose garden pond." I calmed myself down and looked at them. "All right," I said. "Stop right there. How much did the housekeeper give you?" Give me a price and I'll pay. Take the money and get out of here. I pointed toward the door. That won't do. If you do this, it won't be good for me. Won't it affect our work? The worker was still not happy. Just as I was about to open my mouth, Duanmuke suddenly came out from the side door of the house. He stood under the tree and looked at me. I told them to come here. I looked at Duanmuke, my face ugly. I asked him calmly, "Why did you do this?" Duanmuke looked at me. "No reason. I don't like this rose garden pond. I'd rather build a fountain. I don't like that rattan chair either. I'll have to trouble you to tear it down for me later." Duanmuke pointed at the rattan chair I used to rest in. It seemed that he wanted to destroy all my memories. I quickly walked forward and stood in front of the rattan chair. I looked at Duanmuke and said, "No, you can't tear it down." At this moment, Exa and Yao and the others arrived. They saw me standing in front of the rattan chair, and several workers in front of me. Suri quickly stood in front of me. He looked at the workers, afraid that they would hurt me. "What's going on here? Brother, don't tell me you want to tear it down. This won't do, brother. This is sister-in-law's favorite place." Xingyao looked at Duanmuke, and also pleaded for me. Duanmuke looked at me calmly and said, "But this isn't my favorite place. If I say tear it down, then tear it down. Hurry up and tear it down. Otherwise I won't pay you." With that, the workers started the chainsaw again and swept away the roses. "No." I bypassed Suri and ran towards the rose pond. I tried to stop them, but I didn't expect to be hugged by Han Hao. Han Hao hugged my waist from behind. I waved my arms, trying to break free from Han Hao's embrace. However, Han Hao held me very tightly. No matter how hard I struggled, I could only watch as the roses in the garden were destroyed before my eyes. My tears couldn't stop flowing. I collapsed in Han Hao's embrace. I didn't know what to do. I cried myself hoarse. Everyone stood there and looked at me. Han Hao turned me around and hugged me tightly. He stroked my hair and said softly, "Don't cry, don't cry. There will be more in the future." I tugged at Han Hao's clothes, my mind blank. Xi and Yao stood next to me and kept wiping my tears with a tissue. Her face was full of worry. At this time, a worker asked Duanmuke, "Young Master Duanmu, the flowers in the flower pond have been cut. Do you still want to tear down the rattan chair? Tear it down." The word seemed to have been squeezed out of Duanmuke's mouth and fiercely pierced my ears. I turned around and looked at Duanmu. I shook my head at him and said, "Don't tear it down anymore. I'm begging you, okay?" Duanmuke just stood there and looked at me. He didn't say a word. The workers felt a little embarrassed. But in the face of monetary benefits, they chose to listen to Duanmuke's instructions and walked towards the rattan chair. At this moment, Su Rui quickly walked over to the rattan chair. He stood in front of the chair and looked at the workers. He then looked at Duanmuke and said loudly, "If any of you dare to tear down this chair, I'll tear him down." Duanmuke raised his head and looked at Suri. "Suri, right? This is my Duanmu's home. No matter how you look at it, it's not your place to interrupt. Didn't your master teach you etiquette?" Chapter 107. Suri's face turned red. He glared at Duanmuke, but he didn't say anything. Han Hao hugged me. He looked at Duanmuke and said, "Xiaoke, you've gone too far. That rattan chair isn't a problem. Why do you have to tear it down?" Duanmuke looked at Han Hao, his eyes sharp. He said to Han Hao, "How long are you going to hug my woman? We haven't even divorced yet. How dare you act so recklessly?" I pushed Han Hao away and walked in front of Duanmu. My face was still wet with tears. I looked into his eyes and pointed at the unrecognizable flower pond. "Duanmuke, you've already destroyed my most beloved flower pond. It seems like you don't care about me anymore. How could you be so cruel?" Duanmuke sneered. "There's nothing cruel about it. If you Xian hadn't told me that this place had been remodeled, I wouldn't have known that this place had been built here. Originally, this place was supposed to be a fountain, but it was turned into a flower pond instead. I really don't like flowers, and it was ugly, so I tore it down. It's that simple." "Shut up." I lowered my head and said to Duanmu, "Anyway, you won't be staying here for long. I can do whatever I want. You can't do anything about it. Dwamuke reached out and lifted my chin. He looked into my eyes and said softly, "So, you don't have to worry about it. There's no need to look like a madman here. After all, you're still the young mistress of the Dwanmu family. Pay attention to your status. Don't ruin the reputation of the Dwanmu family." Hearing Dwanmuke's words, I couldn't suppress the anger in my heart. I reached out, raised my arm, and with a paw sound, a loud slap landed on Dwanmuke's face. Dwanmuke stood there, holding his face, and blanked out. "Shaoli," I heard Han Hao's voice. He ran to my side and quickly pulled me into his arms. Suri also rushed in front of me and shielded me behind him. Xinya also ran over and pulled me back. Before I could react, Dwanmuke was already in front of us. He reached out and grabbed my collar. I was so scared that I closed my eyes. Dwanmuke's actions were stopped by Suri. Han Hao took the opportunity to carry me and retreat. "Let go of me." Dwanmuke shook off Suri's arm and stood there, glaring at me. Han Hao looked at Dwanmuke and said, "Xiaoke, you've gone too far. How could you hit her?" Dwanmuke glanced at Han Hao, then looked at me and said, "What I do with my own woman? When did it become your business? I don't want to lose my temper with you. Take Xinyao and leave quickly." Han Hao didn't let go of me. He looked at me and gently stroked my hair, indicating that I shouldn't be afraid. Then, he raised his head and said to Dwanmuke, "You don't cherish her, but I do. Since we've already decided to divorce, you shouldn't interfere with who Shaoli chooses to be with." "Han Hao, don't force me." Dwanmuke's eyes widened as he roared at Han Hao. Han Hao sneered and looked at him. "Today, I must take Shaoli away. I've had enough. I don't want to see you torture her anymore." Han Hao turned and glanced at Xinyao. "Xinyao, please tell Uncle and Auntie that I borrowed Shaoli. If anything happens, I'll take responsibility." "Can you take responsibility?" Dwanmuke wanted to rush over again, but Suri stopped him. Dwanmuke roared at Suri, "Get lost." Han Hao looked at Suri and said, "Suri, ignore him. After I leave, go back to the Lung residence and tell Uncle and Auntie what happened. Tell them that I took Shaoli away." Then, Han Hao picked me up and walked towards the door. He looked at me, his eyes full of tenderness. He said to me, "I'm going all out. For you, anything is worth it." Han Hao carried me to the door. I wrapped my arms around Han Hao's neck and looked behind him. I saw Dwanmuke's frowning face. Was he reluctant? Or was he willing? The destruction of the Rose Pond had pretty much destroyed my love for Dwanmu, Quebec. After leaving the Dwanmu residence and getting into Han Hao's car, I was like a zombie. My eyes were empty, and my mind was blank. I couldn't remember anything, and I didn't want to remember anything. When we arrived at the Dwanmuke residence, Han Hao pulled me to the living room. Han Hao's father was sitting in the living room. Han Hao looked at his father and said, "Dad, this is Cold Glaze. She'll be staying with us for a few days. Dad, I'll take her upstairs first." "Stop right there." Han Hao's father stopped him. Han Hao stopped and turned to look at his father. Then he looked at me. He called a housekeeper over and asked her to arrange a room for me. Then, he gently patted my shoulder and turned to walk back to his father. The housekeeper brought me to a guest room at the corner of the stairs. She simply decorated the room, then closed the door and left. I was curious about what Han Hao's father wanted to talk to him about, so I quietly opened the door a little. I could hear the conversation between Han Hao and his father downstairs. Han Hao's father asked, "Hao heir, do you know what you're doing? You brought back Dwanmuke's wife, Dwanmutachio's daughter-in-law. Dwanmuke just called me and asked if Cold Glaze was in our house. I said no. Now you've brought her back. What's going on? Hurry up. Hurry up and send her back." "Dad, I won't send her back. She's already preparing to divorce Dwanmu, Quebec. She's free now. Also, I don't want to hide it from you. I'm going to pursue Cold Glaze. I want to marry her." Han Hao, who had always been gentle, acted as if he had lost his mind. His tone was firm and resolute. "You're hopeless. Have you considered our family before doing this? What if the Kurosawa really comes looking for trouble with our family? How do you want me to protect this family? How can I protect you?" Han Hao's father's words made sense. According to Dwanmuke's personality, He definitely wouldn't let his family off if I stayed here. I could faintly hear Han Hao sigh. He continued, Dad, no matter what you say, I'll stick to my principles. I must be with cold glaze. No matter who opposes me, I'll persist. Dad, don't say anything. Don't worry. I won't let you and Mom be in danger. In 2 days, I'll move out with cold glaze. What? You want to move out? Do you think moving out will solve everything? Duanmuke won't chase you to the ends of the earth. Son, don't be so naive. Chapter 108. Hearing Han Hao's father say that, I didn't want to be a burden to others. I opened the door and was about to go out when I heard Han Hao say to his father, Dad, I've never begged you before. I beg you to believe your son this once. I will never do anything to hurt you and Mom. Please, Dad. After a long time, Han Hao's father didn't say anything. After a while, Han Hao's father finally opened his mouth and said to Han Hao, all right. I only have one son, so I can only listen to you. All right, since you're so confident, then we'll do as you wish. Really? That's great. Thank you, Dad. Then I'll go upstairs first. Hearing him say that, I quickly returned to the room, closed the door, and sat down on the chair. Not long after, the door was pushed open and Han Hao walked in. He looked at me and said excitedly, Shaoli, I have good news to tell you. My father has agreed to let me pursue you. That's great. Seeing Han Hao's happy expression, I couldn't feel happy at all. Han Hao looked at me and suddenly realized that he hadn't considered my feelings. He put his hands on the armrests of the sofa, and his face was very close to mine. He looked at me and said, I'm sorry, Shaoli. I didn't consider your feelings. I'm sorry. Don't be sad. He reached out and gently touched my face. Feeling the warmth of his palm, I closed my eyes and tears flowed down again. Seeing this, Han Hao hugged me in his arms and gently kissed my forehead. He stroked my hair and said softly, Don't cry. I'm here. Don't worry and stay here for 2 days. I'll accompany you well. Han Hao held my face and looked at me with his gentle eyes. Oh right. Don't you like roses? My garden is a little small, so I made a small rose pond for you. You can go and see it. I don't know what color roses you like, so I planted some of each color. I don't know if you like them or not. Hearing Han Hao say that, my tears flowed down again. He gently wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes, and his expression was very gentle. It made me regret not choosing such a man in the first place. I looked at Han Hao and said, Han Hao, why are you so good to me? Han Hao held my face and gently kissed my lips. He looked at me and said, Shaoli, I really like you. I don't know why, but when I don't see you, I always think about you. Sometimes I find it ridiculous. When I think about you and Duanmuke having to spend the rest of your life together, my heart aches. But when I heard that Duanmuke wanted to divorce you that day, I suddenly felt that my chance had come. I swore that I would get you, that I would give you happiness, and that you wouldn't be wronged anymore. These are my true thoughts, so I have to be good to you. Maybe my family isn't as rich and powerful as the Duanmu family, and I'm not as perfect as Duanmuke, but my feelings for you won't be any less than his feelings for you, or even more than his. Hearing Han Hao say that, I reached out and hugged Han Hao. At that moment, the warmth of Han Hao's embrace made me feel very safe. Han Hao hugged me tightly. He stroked my hair and said, Shaoli, don't be afraid. In the future, I will be with you every day. Don't worry, I won't let you leave me again. This time, I will hold you tightly in my arms. I nodded vigorously and snuggled into Han Hao's embrace. Actually, I was conflicted. I couldn't give up my feelings for Duanmuke, but I couldn't resist Han Hao's pursuit of me. I didn't know if what I was doing was right or wrong. Forget it, let nature take its course. At this moment, my phone rang. I took it out and saw that it was Xinyao. I picked up the phone. Hello, Xinyao. Sister-in-law, are you okay? Have you arrived at Han Hao Gija's home? Xinyao asked worriedly. NN, I've arrived. Don't worry. Everything is fine on my side. How are you? Did Dad and Mom make things difficult for you? Did Duanmuke hurt you? I was very worried about Xinyao's situation. Don't worry, sister-in-law. Everything is fine on my side. Gidge was very irritable at first, but I subdued him later. I also talked to Dad and Mom, saying that you're going to Han Hao Gidge's home to play for 2 days. They won't think too much about it. Suri also went back to the Lung family. I just talked to him on the phone, and he's fine on his side. Xinya reported the situation to me. That's good. It's good that you're fine. My heart was finally relieved. But sister-in-law, there's something I'm sorry about. Xinya lowered her voice and said to me, "What is it?" That. Xinyao's words were obviously hesitant. The rattan chair by the rose pond, I couldn't keep it. Gidge still tore it down. I held the phone in my hand and lowered my head. Seeing this, Han Hao hugged me. I knew he was comforting me. Hearing that I didn't answer, Xinyao continued. I later found out that it was you Xan who instigated Gidge to tear it down. Actually, now that I think about it, Gidge didn't like to stroll around the garden. Otherwise, how would he know what was there in the past and what is there now? It's obvious that someone told on you Xan, so Gidge did it. I sighed and said softly, "Forget it. It's all in the past. If you want to tear it down, then so be it. It doesn't belong to me anymore. Sister-in-law, don't think about it. Have a good rest and have fun for 2 days. When you want to come back, you can come back. Don't worry, I'll take care of Gidge. Bye." Then, Xinyao hung up the phone. After I hung up, I sat there with a serious expression. Han Hao looked at me. It seemed he'd heard what we were talking about. I raised my head and looked at him. Han Hao, I'm a little tired. I want to lie down for a while. Okay. Han Hao helped me stand up. He lifted the blanket, and I took off my shoes and lay on the bed. He gently covered me with the blanket, and then sat on the chair next to the bed. He stared at me and stroked my hair from time to time. I looked at Han Hao and said softly, "Why don't you go back and rest for a while? You've been busy all morning." Han Hao shook his head and looked at me. "It's okay. You go to sleep. I just want to look at you like this." I looked into Han Hao's eyes. His eyes were always so clear and gentle. I held Han Hao's hand and said, "Then it's settled. Don't go. Stay here. If I don't see you when I wake up, I might be scared." You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.